Chapter: Quirk Awakening. Izuku POV. A 4-year-old Izuku was walking in the jungle with Kaken to find and catch some beetles. Kaken was his friend for as long as he could remember. Their moms were childhood friends, so they had met when they were less than 2 years old. Katsuki Bakugo, or as Izuku called him, Kaken, had been looking out for Izuku since the two could walk. The two were inseparable, calling each other brothers from different mothers. "Your quirk is so cool, Kaken. I hope when mine comes it's just as cool as yours," Izuku said excitedly. "Heh, I'm sure it will, Izu. After all, you'll have to be on the top hero list with me," Kaken said with a grin as he swat at a beetle on a tree, shaking the tree in a process. Izuku smiled back at him before noticing that the branch above them was unstable and was shaking wildly due to Kaken. As he saw it fall, he felt like time stopped. He could see that he wouldn't be hit. But Katsuki would. Before he could think, he jumped and pushed Katsuki out of the way. He saw the branch falling towards him like in slow motion, closed his eyes, and could only think one thing. "Please don't hit me. Just go through me." The branch should have hit him by now, he was sure of it. Then why did he not feel any pain? And why did his chest feel weird? "Izu," Katsuki gasped. He cracked open an eyelid with fear, before dropping his jaw as he saw it. The branch had indeed fallen. Right through him, in fact. The thing which shocked them was the fact that it had literally gone through him. The areas where his body was touching it were glowing with a slight white light. Izuku quickly jumped away and saw that there was no hole in him. Nor was he glowing. Nothing to show anything wrong. Even his clothes were all right. "Izuku!" Katsuki snapped out of his shock and quickly made his way to where the former was. "You all right? Are you hurt?" he asked frantically as he checked Izuku. "I'm fine, Kaken. I think that was my quirk," Izuku said with a wide smile as he realized that his quirk had awakened. "Yeah, seems like it. That branch just went through you. Let's get you to Auntie Inko so we can figure this out," Katsuki said with a grin as he grabbed Izuku's hand and they both ran to Izuku's house. Chapter 2: Martial Arts. 5 years later. Izuku Midoriya, or as his best friend Katsuki Kaken Bakugo called him, Izu, walked out of a dojo with Kaken and their moms. Him and Kaken had grown, standing proudly at the heights of 4 feet 3 inches and 4 feet 5 inches respectively. The new pro Eraserhead was someone Izuku had told Kaken about, and both agreed that even without a flashy quirk, Eraserhead was someone who was, as they put it, very cool. Inspired from his fighting style, both had asked their parents that they be enlisted in a dojo to be able to fight like that. Izu had enrolled for jujitsu, mainly because it needed you to be flexible, and with his quirk he could easily manage that. Kaken enrolled into karate, a fighting style which went great with his quirk. Both were learning basic judo, mainly as restraining techniques against villains. Izuku would also be learning kenjutsu and basic ijutsu. Kaken had told him that Izuku's quirk wasn't exactly an offensive type, so a weapon could be useful. Izuku would have asked why Kaken wasn't getting one before remembering that the latter's quirk was literally making explosions. "Oh? And who might you kids be?" a man with spiky black hair asked as he walked towards the door with a duffel bag in his hand. "New students at our dojo?" he asked kindly, stopping and crouching slyly. "Why yes, I'm Izuku Midoriya. This is Katsuki Bakugo," Izuku said, stuttering slyly. "Well, I'm Jean Mori. I'll be teaching jujitsu and taekwondo. If either of you opted for that, I look forward to teaching you," he said as he stood up and continued walking towards the door. "Why yes, I look forward to learning from you," Izu said as he bowed slightly. "We have got to do something about your confidence, Izu," Katsuki muttered as he pulled Izuku by the elbow towards their cab. 3 years later. "Heck yeah, Izuku!" Katsuki Suki Bakugo yelled as Izuku defeated his opponent, a boy with a tail quirk, by sweeping the latter off his feet with a quick kick and a quick thrust at the throat, preventing the tailed boy from breathing and hence forfeiting. Izuku walked down and bumped fists with Suki as he grinned and said, "I'm just built different." Hitoshi Hito Shinso, the new friend they had made during their first year at the dojo, took a staff and threw it at Izuku's left hand, only for it to pass through a white light. "Literally," he said in a deadpan. Yeah, but it's not like I use my quirk while fighting Hito, Izuku said as he rolled his eyes as he put his bamboo sword leaning against the wall. Yeah, he grumbled as he grabbed a pair of bamboo tonfa for his fight, which was to begin in 5 minutes. I want to fight soon too, Katsuki complained as his fight wasn't due for another 20 minutes. Great fight, Izuku, Hisashi Midoriya said with a grin as he walked in the room along with the other two boys' dads, Hajime Shinso and Masaru Bakugo. Go get him, Hajime said as he crouched down and ruffled his son's hair, much to the annoyance of said son. My opponent is a girl anyway, he scoffed. He walked towards the stadium. Well, that's not good, Hajime grimaced as he saw an orange-haired girl smile sadistically towards his son for that comment. Sure enough, Hitoshi was defeated by the black-haired staff-wielding girl seconds after the battle was announced. Not, he muttered as he sat down on a chair, nursing his bruised chin. His two friends said with a nod, trying to hide their smirks. Izuku watched carefully at the girl who had defeated his friend. She was to be his next opponent after all. They kept watch till the orange-haired girl punched a plain-looking black-haired boy with weird elbows in the face and knocked him out of the ring. Finally, Katsuki said with a feral grin as he waited for his name to be called. Katsuki Bakugo versus Tetsu. Ready? Start! The announcer called as Katsuki faced off against a boy their age with messy gray hair and strange white eyebrow markings. They exchanged light blows until Katsuki used one of his opponent's left arm to pull himself under his guard, and ended the match with one uppercut. Winner, Katsuki Bakugo. Katsuki grinned as he looked around at the orange-haired girl, who would be his next opponent. He partially made a slitting motion around his throat before he was lightly chopped on the head and was pulled out of the ring by an embarrassed Izuku. Now for the first match of the quarterfinals. Izuku Midoriya versus Momo Yaoyorozu. Begin. Izuku dashed off with great speed and swung his shurnai, bamboo sword, in an arc parallel to the ground. She quickly used her staff to deflect the blow and jumped in with a kick. Smirking, Izuku grabbed her leg and threw her across the ring, where she bounced against the ground 3 times before backflipping on her legs. She dashed off, thrusting with her staff like it was a spear. Izuku jumped up and brought down the shurnai in a vertical swing and hit her on her right hand, leading to her dropping the staff. Not wasting any time, he feinted a right hook to her face before sweeping her off her feet using a leg sweep. He leaped up and used one of the 2 super moves he had. Focus all my strength into the tip and release in one burst. Solar thrust. She rolled to the side, dodging the slightly glowing tip of the shurnai. He pointed the tip of his weapon at her face. After a moment of hesitation, I yield, she said with a look of shame. Hey, good fight. That kick almost got me, he said with a grin as he offered her a hand. She gratefully took his hand and pulled herself up. I hope you win your next fights as well, she said with a bright smile. Then thank you, he said, blushing up a storm. Izuku was walking back towards the waiting room when there was a very loud screeching sound played on the speakers, causing everyone to cover their ears, and all the lights were suddenly shut off, leaving them in pitch-black darkness. He whirled around as he saw the vague figure of a man, about 5 feet 8 inches, grab a girl around Izuku's age with a ponytail from the fighting ring and run towards a wall? He was about to run after them, but before he could do anything, he felt an impact on the back of his head, and the world faded away into darkness. Chapter 3. Taken. Izuku blinked his eyes open. His mouth was stuffed with some sort of cloth and his arms and legs were tied to the chair he was sitting on. He panicked, trying to free himself of the ropes before remembering that he could go through things, and phased through the ropes and stood up before ripping the gag from his mouth. He looked around, seeing other human-shaped figures around his size, but he couldn't be sure. He tried to focus, and all of a sudden the room looked so bright to him that he thought that someone had switched on a light bulb. The room was in the shape of a cylinder, with a wooden door that was covered in rot and rubbish all over the floor. There were 6 chairs placed in a circle, of which one was already empty, which was the one he had just gotten out of. He crouched behind one of the chairs, thinking someone had switched on the lights and was about to come in before looking at the door and realizing that no one was there. Must be a side effect of my quirk, he muttered as he stood up before freezing as he realized that the chair he hid behind was occupied. And it contained Katsuki Bakugo. A very, very angry Katsuki Bakugo. Katsuki flailed around, looking around as his tied hands crackled with small explosions. Calm down, Suki. It's me, Izuku, he whispered. Katsuki stilled and looked towards him, squinting his eyes to see clearly who was there, only to see a pair of slightly glowing green eyes. One is to see, Izuku muttered as he looked around and saw that there was a broken glass bottle of beer. He took one of the sharper shards and cut Katsuki free from all the bindings. How the hell can you see? He half whispered as he looked around unsure where he was. I guess my quirk lets me see in the dark. Anyway, there's a few more people here. I recognize a few as the participants of the tournament, but some I have no idea. Get 'em all here so we can all get the fuck out of here. Language. And we don't even know where here is, Izuku said as he slowly made his way to Shinso, who was still knocked out. One by one, Izuku explained the situation to each of them slowly before cutting their restraints and slowly guiding them to where Katsuki was. There were Izuku, Katsuki, Shinso, Izuku's last opponent, Momo Yaoyorozu, the orange-haired girl, Itsuka Kendo, and a boy named Tetsu. So now what? Kendo asked with a whisper. Well, for starters, there's a door, he said with a matter-of-fact voice. How do we see where it is, though? Tetsu asked as he accidentally smashed his nose against the wall. Let me try something, Izuku muttered as he closed his eyes. Every time I phase that Asaskanskinthan. All of them took a step back as he started glowing off with a white light. You're like a walking light bulb, Katsuki snickered as all their eyes adjusted to the sudden difference in brightness. Shut up, Mr. Blasty, Izuku muttered as they reached a door which was slightly ajar, bright light flowing in through the gap. Izuku stopped glowing, leaving the gap as the only source of light. Why can't we kill a brat or two? Show 'em we're serious, a rough voice said with a cackle. Like I said, we can't do that 'cause we'd be paid less, a smoother voice said. Well, why not cut off a finger or something? From one of the low-value ones, obviously. The Yaoyorozu and the Midoriya have to be in mint condition, a third voice, which sounded like it was the leader's, said. The kids who were listening froze as they heard this. I get why Yaoyorozu 'cause they're a rich family, but why you? Tetsu asked in a whisper. His dad's a detective, Katsuki answered. How could these guys even get to know that Midoriya-san is his son, though? That information is supposed to be confidential. Yaoyorozu, Izuku's last opponent from the tournament, questioned. How does that even matter right now? Kendo hissed at them. He's right. Escape now, find answers later, Tetsu said. Hey, the kids are gone, the first voice said suddenly. What? The leader asked tense. They can't have left the building, the last person said. Shinshiro, use your quirk and find them already, the leader roared. I'm already on it, the first voice said as they heard a strange whoosh, and they were buffeted by a strong gust of wind. They're right outside. Shit, Kendo half-shouted, half-whispered. Hito, use your quirk to stop one of them. The rest of us take on either one of the remaining two. Izuku quickly muttered the plan to them as they all nodded. The doors flew open as they saw a gray-haired man with strange metal gauntlets on both of his hands, and judging from the wind flowing from the holes in the gauntlets, the cause of the wind they had felt earlier. There was another man with black hair, with so much gel on it that it looked like it had been drowned in a tub of gel, who was wearing a monocle. Other than that, his appearance was nothing special. The last one had brown hair and red feathers on his hands, and his face was set in a permanent scowl. You look like cheap Elvis Presley, Shinso immediately yelled at the monocle-wearing man. What did you dash? The man snarled before he stood still, his eyes blank. And then all hell broke loose. Chapter 4. Rescue. Enji Todoroki, or more popularly known as the number 2 hero Endeavor, was downing a cup of coffee in his office when, bang! He quickly got up from his chair, fire flaring and collecting to his fist. "Who dares Tio Hisashi?" he said, confused, as he looked at the black-haired man who was panting slightly. "I need your help. My son's 6 kids have been kidnapped," he yelled immediately. He briskly walked forward, the drink forgotten as he gruffly grabbed Hisashi by the shoulder and steered him to a chair. "Calm down and tell me what happened," he said, handing Hisashi a glass of water and calming the ever-present flames on his costume so that the latter would be able to breathe easily. "Me and my family, along with a few family friends, were at the God of Combat tournament because our sons had made it in. My boy, Izuku, had just beat his opponent, the Yaoyorozu heir, when the lights cut off, and when we all came to, the top 6 competitors were nowhere to be found." "I see. Believe me, we'll find them, and if your son is anything like you, I'm sure he'll find a way to let us know where they are, but in the meantime I'll have an alert sent out so every hero in the city knows about this and make it priority number 1". "Thanks, Enji. I'm glad that you're willing to help me despite." Hisashi stopped talking and clenched his fists. Endeavor's eyes softened and he said quietly, "I would never blame you for Tuya. Can't find someone if they burn up in a building. I should thank you actually. If it hadn't been for you, God knows what I would have acted like with Rei and my children," he sighed. "If only they saw you like this," Hisashi said with a sad smile. "Well then, we better hurry." Izuku Midoriya was, despite everything, starting to smile slightly as he jumped backwards, dodging a couple of feathers from the man who was being referred to as Takami by his associate with hold gauntlets, who was referred to as Shinchiro. He ducked under a lunge and kicked the man towards Kendo, who enlarged her fists and delivered an uppercut so strong the man was dazed enough for Tetsu knock the man to the ground. He looked around to see Katsuki blind the man with the gloves using the smoke caused by his quirk, and Shinso tripped the man while Yaoyorozu knocked him out using a small metal rod she created using her quirk. "How are these the guys who kidnapped us?" Katsuki snorted. "Yes, we won," Izuku exclaimed as he jumped in joy, not noticing the pebble which was launched by the action. Said pebble hit the monocle-bearing man. Time froze for Izuku Midoriya as he turned to see said man get up and charge at him with incredible speed. Incredibly, he was able to react in time and the man phased through him. He did not, however, phase through the 3 others behind Izuku. Kendo, Tetsu, and Shinso all hit the floor hard as a fully grown man landed on top of them. The man, however, did not stay down. The eye behind the monocle glowed, and suddenly, all the kids felt an immense pressure on them, like gravity had doubled. "Little children should listen to their elders," he snarled. "Fuck you," Katsuki yelled as he spammed his quirk, causing a lot of smoke to appear. Izuku used the smokescreen to crawl over to the man and flashed his quirk, causing the man to flinch and gravity to return back to normal. He jumped up and grabbed the man's foot, stopping the latter from moving. Making full use of the opportunity, Kendo used her giant fist and punched him in the face, knocking him out. Bang bang. Everyone froze as they heard the sound of gunshots, and turned slowly to see a 4th man holding a revolver and looking pissed. "I leave for 1 hour," he said, "and everything goes to shit here." He was bald, and had a scar running from just below his ear to through his lower lip. "All you kids, single file," he said with a thick accent. "Russian, maybe?" Izuku's mind raced a million thoughts a second. "Now," he roared as he shot the ground again. Quietly, all of them stood in a single file as ordered. "Which of you is Midoriya Izuku?" he asked. Izuku stiffened. "That's me," he heard Katsuki say beside him, slightly covering Izuku. The man gave a bone-chilling grin. "Good boy, stepping up like that," he said as he aimed his pistol at Katsuki's head. "But I've seen his pops, and that man ain't blonde." Bang! Izuku almost saw it in slow motion as instead of his childhood friend, the surprised man fell over. The door was flung open as 20 policemen and 5 pro heroes, including the number 2 hero, stormed into the building. The one who had shot the man was another policeman, this one wearing a gray vest rather than the standard blue, who Izuku could barely make out through the tiny cracks in the ceiling. He didn't even realize that tears were streaming down his face until he felt his father hugging him tightly. "D-Dad?" he whispered. "I'm here, Izuku. I'm here, you're safe and everything's over." the older Midoriya said firmly. Suspect apprehended, he heard another man in blue say into a microphone attached to his collar before addressing his father Midoriya-san. I know that this is a bit insensitive, but I'd suggest having your reunion outside the building. His dad nodded and stood up straight again. You're right, Yoshino and Himejima. You can ask the ones outside to lower the barricades. We have it under control now. The man saluted and headed out to do as ordered. I'll sweep through the building to ensure no stragglers, Endeavor said as he went deeper into the building. It was just the kids, the knocked-out criminals, and a couple of police officers, including his dad in the room now. All of you, why don't we get out of here? I'll treat you all to ice cream, Hisashi said with a smile. The kids nodded and quietly filed out of the room. Now that they were under the sun's light, Izuku finally realized. It's over. He looked around him to see that this realization dawned on the rest of their little group as well. Yaoyorozu and Kendo were hugging each other and crying. Tetsu and Hitoshi were just sitting on the ground, their faces hidden behind their hands, and he could even hear soft sobs coming from Katsuki. He was going to say something to his closest friend when… Chapter 5. Pages from the Diary of Enji Todoroki. May 17, 3164. It has been 2 weeks since the death of my closest friend, Midoriya Hisashi. His funeral was yesterday, and I went alone. The only other ones there were the families of the children who were taken. Turns out, the one who shot him was the weakest one of them all, Takami. Hisashi wasn't even in the path of the bullet. He took it to protect his son. In the end, that man was more of a hero than I can ever hope to be. Without him around, I will make sure his family does not suffer. And I will ensure that my family does not either. After seeing Hisashi's sacrifice, I realized my folly. A legacy to surpass all might? What a joke. Before becoming a hero, I need to learn how to be a human, and how to be a father. I will not allow what happened to Tuya happen ever again. October 4th, 3164. Natsuo has finally told me his decision. He plans to be a hero and says that someone has to save the people who Tuya was going to. That boy, I swear, I will never know where he got that sarcasm of his. He has quite the quirk too. Not only can he create ice like his mother, he can control it from afar as well. I know because he almost dropped a brick of it on Fuyumi's leg and was able to make it levitate using his powers. He is now learning about ice control from his uncle Giton, Rei's cousin brother. He said he wants me to teach him how to fight once he learns everything he can. Fuyumi said that she wants to become a doctor and save lives in her own way, and Rei has decided to introduce her to one of her friends. Shoto says that he might as well become a hero as well as that's what he was made for. He had a smirk, so I'm not sure if that was meant to be a jab at me or not. I will take it as a warning that while they may have forgiven, they have not forgotten. April 23rd, 3161. Natsuo completed his second week at UA today. He says that he was planning on taking the hero name Dabi, which Tuya planned on using, but then decided that he would be better off with Frozone, a hero name of his own. I'm pretty sure he went along with it because his classmate Yutakiyama suggested it to him while flirting. He is, as they say these days, a simp. Fuyumi is going to start college soon as well. She was accepted in the Yale School of Medicine in the US. Shoto says he made a friend called Tenya Ida in Sumai Junior High. Rei recently joined a book club nearby and has been gushing about a book to me called The Fault in Our Stars. She keeps telling me to read it. What she doesn't know is that I read it 4 years ago, on the day of its release. I even had it signed by the author when we went to the US to confirm Fuyumi's college application. Chapter 6. Meeting All Might. Wreath the Rithing. The students at Aldra Junior High started to drift back to their seats as the morning bell rung. Izuku barely made it back to his chair when the teacher walked in with a stack of papers. All right, students, I think it's time you thought about your futures. That's why I've bought these career sheets, he said while gesturing towards the stack before throwing it up into the air. But we all know you plan on being heroes. This seemed like a cue as everyone started going wild with their quirks for a solid 5 minutes before the teacher coughed and reminded them that illegal quirk usage was illegal. The conversations going on faced an abrupt stop, however, when Katsuki Bakugo stood up on his chair. Oi, teach, don't lump me in with these extras. They'll be D-tier sidekicks at best. But me? I'll be the #1 hero. Oh yeah, the teacher said. Weren't you planning to go to UA Bakugo? Murmurs ensued after that statement. UA? The school with less than 1% accepting rate? That's right, Katsuki boasted. I'll get into UA, and then I'll be the strongest hero. Oh? It seems Midoriya-kun also plans on going there. Everyone became quiet. Of course, he will, Bakugo said with a grin as he put his hand on Izuku's shoulder. If I'm a pencil, he's my sharpener. Ain't that right, Aizu? I'm going for the support course, Suki. Izuku said while pushing off the hand. You know I don't plan on being a hero. Why not? The whole class yelled out, with your quirk you'd be great. I was unaware that anyone other than me gets to decide, Izuku said sharply. Everyone mumbled before returning to their seats. End of the school day. Izuku heard footsteps behind and turned around to see Katsuki there with two of his cronies near the door. I wanted to return this, Bakugo said while handing Izuku a notebook. Thanks for the notes. I seriously don't get how Sensei doesn't get that most of us sleep. Yeah, I didn't make these notes during the class either. They're my own. That's why I prefer yours to glasses extra. Mashiro-san Katsuki. At least remember names. I don't need no names. I also wanted to ask you something. No, I'm not changing my mind. No, I'm not going to reconsider it. Izuku said with a frown before packing up his bag and moving past Bakugo. Gotta get home now, see ya tomorrow. Rather than explode like he would have with anyone else who showed him attitude, Bakugo just sighed before going back out with the extras. With Izuku approaching the tunnel, Izuku pondered on what Katsuki had said. The hero course, huh? As if someone like me could ever be a hero. Yeah, you can, he heard a voice behind. You can be my hero by letting me take your body. What dash was all he could get out before being swallowed by a wall of green slime. Tashinori, All Might Yagi was annoyed, smelly and slightly thirsty. The sewers of Mustafu are way too confusing. He paused when he heard a shout nearby. If that slime got to a citizen, I'll turn him into a smoothie. He rushed to the open sewer grate to see a green mass above along with rays of white light. He burst through the grate to see the villain crying out in pain. There was a green-haired boy with a glowing arm directing some sort of light directly into the villain's eye. I am here. Yeah, I noticed, said the boy, but Yagi could tell he was fanboying on the inside. How did he know that? The boy was muttering. Omigo Daitsal might, Watishidwar Wadi was just Narkayat Hamai Tomigo Dimafucking Dumbasidashold probably stop muttering now. Indeed, you should, young man. Hi. I'm Izuku Midoriya. This guy tried to take over my body or whatever so. The boy said as he gestured at the incapacitated villain. I am quite thankful, young man. The sewer systems are quite hard to navigate when new to a city. Since you're here, could you sign my notebook? Why, of course I can, Yagi said as he signed with a pen the boy handed him across 2 open pages. Well then, my boy, I must be off if you would hand me the villain. I don't want to overstep, but I think you should have something to contain this guy in. Not to worry. I have this, Yagi said before downing an entire bottle of soda and stuffing the villain into the bottle. That was disturbing. All right then, boy, I'll be off now. Villains don't take a break, and nor will I. And then he was off. What he didn't realize was that the bottle slipped out of his pocket, right in front of a certain spiky-haired blonde boy. All right, I got the chips. Hitoshi said he'd get the cups and momos, getting the TV system. Izuku said while exiting a grocery shop with a bag in one hand reading something on his phone with the other. She's what? He heard Itsuka say in confusion. Yeah, rich people logic, I guess. All right, I gotta get back to training. See ya Saturday. Bye, he said before cutting the call. He nearly jumped out of his uniform when he heard an explosion accompanied by smoke from a nearby street. Might be worth checking out. Katsuki? Izuku was confused. He knew for a fact that All Might had put the slime villain in a bottle and jumped/flown away. He was even more confused about why he was running towards said slime villain. "What the hell are you doing?" he heard Death Arms shout behind him. "NOCLUE," he shouted behind himself while dodging and weaving. "It's you again," the slime shouted before covering its eye to prevent Izuku from flashing him. "The cork way not." "Never mind. If he can't see, he's gonna rely on sound or smell." Izuku leaped back, right beside Kamui Woods, who was frozen for a second before hastily pulling Izuku back. "Step back, kid. This is too dangerous for someone so young to be involved with." "Kamui-san, sorry to interrupt, but small question. If your branches snap off, do they grow back?" "Why yes, but that's not the point dash. I need you to lend me a katana-shaped branch as compact and strong as possible." "There's no way." The two looked to see Death Arms marching. "Get back now, kid. That's an order from a pro." "Wait," Kamui interrupted. "What would you do if I gave it to you?" "My quirk makes me practically immune to physical attacks, but I can't go on the offensive without a weapon. I trained in swordsmanship to compensate for that, so I can at least get my friend out of there." Kamui Woods looked searchingly into Izuku's eyes and then around them, probably to find any other solution. "Hate to say it," he sighed before extending his left arm into a perfect katana shape before using his other hand to break it off. "But you're the only hope he's got. I'll try my best to cover you." "Thank you," Izuku said with a nod before gripping the sword with both hands. The same stance he had learnt when he was small, the same stance he had the day of the competition, and the same stance he held while facing his capturers. "This won't be like that day. I'll make sure of it." And he dashed off. He was like an arrow, released from his bow as he blitzed through the incoming tendrils before slashing through a thicker one. He then jumped up high, with the sun at his back to not just blind the villain, but to use its light energy to fuel the blow to end this. He brought it above his head. He had come up with two super moves when he was young. One he had used against Momo in that tournament. The other he would use now. Solar Flare. He released a huge slash made of white light, which sliced through the tentacles like they were made of butter. The attack also cut through the tentacles holding Katsuki. Izuku landed beside his friend and grabbed his friend. "Blast us outta here," he yelled. Katsuki yelled, "Don't tell me what to do," back, but used his explosions to get them out of range of the incoming tendrils. Izuku raised his weapon when he saw that the villain had raised his tendrils when, "I am here." Everyone, even the villain, turned to see All Might literally appear out of nowhere beside Izuku, like he had teleported. "Don't worry, boys. You're all right now," he said before turning to the villain. "I thought I had dealt with you, but I must have gotten careless. A mistake I shall not repeat." Detroit Smash. The villain burst into tiny splatters of slime everywhere. He changed the weather," Empty Lady said, and they all looked up to see the hole in the sky made by just one punch from the strongest man in the world. Chapter 7, One for All. "I refuse." What? Toshinori spit out blood as he heard the green-haired boy's response. He had seen the boy leave and talk to the blonde-haired boy who the slime villain had captured before sulking to, presumably, his house. So, he followed the boy, showed him his real form, which got a jump 2 feet behind, and questioned whether he was an imposter. He explained everything to the boy, one for all, his injury and his time limit. He then held his hand to the awestruck boy and declared that the boy was worthy of his power and could be the greatest hero to ever live. "Why would you refuse?" the blonde questioned. "I'm not planning to be a hero, All Might. But your movements back there, and the swordsmanship you showed, no regular person can just do that. I trained to be a hero when I was younger, but then I realized something, and stopped. Thanks for the offer, but I'll have to refuse." Toshinori looked thoughtful as he said, "Would you please come with me on a walk, young man? Forget about One for All and that I'm All Might. Right now I'm just Mr. Yagi. There's a park nearby. Tell me your story at the bench. Even off duty you're saving people, huh?" "There is no off-duty for me, I'm afraid. It's either All Might or Small Might, as Recovery Girl once said. Anyway, I would like to ask you a personal question, Shonen, if you don't mind. Go ahead. What is this realization you say you had? That I can't save anyone. The one thing a hero has to do above all else is to save people, but I couldn't even save my own father when he was right in front of me. He died because I couldn't do anything. Midoriya Shonen, do you think that I've saved everyone I've ever met? Why yeah, you're the symbol of peace. It's never happened that you arrive at a scene and anyone ends up hurt. All Might had a sad smile now. What if I told you that the one person I cared for more than other, the person I saw as my mother, died to save me from a villain? The same villain who gave me this scar, funnily enough. I am so sorry. Don't be. She died being herself. A hero. Izuku looked down now, lost in thought. Just because I couldn't save one person doesn't mean I can't save anyone. Trust me when I say I understand what you're going through. But I kept going. Because that's what Nana wanted. She's the one who made me into a hero. Izuku looked up to the sky now. Would Dad be happy with the way I am right now? Dumb question. He would be proud no matter what I do, because that's just what he was like. I'll do it, All Might, he said, finally looking straight at the man. That's what my dad would have wanted. No, it's what he wants me to do. I'll make sure no one else has to feel this pain again. All Might was grinning now, and even in his skeletal form Izuku could see the smile of the symbol of peace. All right then, my boy. Meet me at Dagoba Beach tomorrow morning by 7 a.m. At Dagoba Beach next morning at 7 a.m. Small Might was inspecting Izuku's body, asking Izuku to flex his arms and do some stretches. I must say, my boy, your uniform is quite deceiving. Yeah, I stay fit. Honestly, I was expecting this to take much longer than it will. My original plan was for you to clean up this beach by 10 months and have the physique to handle one for all, but I guess that doesn't really matter now. Your current body could handle it, albeit barely. How about we make sure it's not barely, sir? Yes, that would be good. Izuku walked through the gates of UA, his friends beside him as he walked through the front gate. He could hear the idle chatter around him, his friends wondering what the practical portion would be. Katsuki saying he'd get the #1 spot and Itsuka bonking him on his head with a textbook she was revising from. He didn't pay attention to any of that though. All he could focus on was the top of the building, where he could see the shadow of a man. Izuku could almost feel the man's gaze as it looked over each and every one of the applicants, until it landed on him. The man's eyes seemed to widen before he vanished so abruptly Izuku wondered if that actually happened. Since he was too focused on the random guy who vanished, he didn't notice a rock on the ground, which he managed to slip on. He closed his eyes and braced for impact, but the impact never came. "Eh? I'm sorry for using my quirk on you without asking," said a brown bob-haired girl. "But I feel like falling before the exam would be bad luck." Thanks," Izuku said as he righted himself while she touched all 5 of her fingertips. "No problem. Good luck on the exam." She gave him a smile and then she was gone. In front of him, his friends were staring at him while Katsuki was holding his phone, recording Izuku's great fall. UA testing ground gamma. Izuku was a flash. A 2-pointer here, a 3-pointer there. He was breaking them the moment he was seeing them. This was the result of his training with All Might and that man for the past 7 months. One for all circulating inside his body while his quirk flowed over his body. Like a second skin but constantly moving. Flow state. Flow state wasn't much of an attack as much as an enhancer. A boost for his physical and quirk state. It was a simple idea. Have Ofa circulate at 8% inside his body in a constant flow to enhance his body while his quirk, Glint, flowed over his body, matching the pace of Ofa inside his body. He was snapped out of his thoughts when he heard a crash to his left along with a scream. By the time his brain had finished thinking the thought, "I should check that out," his body was already at the site. 2 2-pointers and a 3-pointer were chasing 2 boys. Flash step. He was there in an instant with a fist in one robot's face and a kick for another. The last robot, one of the 2-pointers, shot its lasers, but him being literally made of light meant he was out of the way in a flash. Physical attacks are completely nullified, he thought to himself bitterly. But attacks like those lasers or Katsuki's explosions are still very much painful. He used Flash Step again to appear behind the two-pointer before punching its head off. He looked back to see the two boys on the ground, terrified. Judging by the smell, one had peed himself. He was going to tell them to get out of there when he felt an impact so strong he actually jumped a bit. Without as much as a glance, he was out of there, rushing to the main street where he could see people getting the hell out of there. He looked to where they were running from to see why. Oh, a huge killer robot would indeed inspire him to run away. He was going to follow through on that when he heard a tiny ouch. He turned around in a flash to see the same girl with her legs crushed under rocks. Right in the robot's path. There was no contemplation, no thinking. 1 second he was there, the next he wasn't. Izuku was running at the girl so fast he was practically a blur with his fist cocked back. 15% Detroit smash. The rock crumbled like a sand castle. The girl looked up at him in shock without crying out in horror. Look out! Izuku wasn't stupid. Considering the fact that a huge killer robot was nearby earlier, he assumed it was that. There was no time to hold back or to think about options. He put everything he had in his right fist and punched it straight up towards the incoming hand. The giant robotic appendage was pulverized within seconds in a beam of bright white light. It didn't stop there though. Even thought the rest of the robot wasn't even in the path of Izuku's attack. It was thrown back with such force it actually looked like a giant bowling ball. His arm hurt. He stumbled and fell on his butt as his vision blurred as well. Shit, he muttered under his breath. He had overclocked his body. Whenever he used OFA at 100% through any of his appendages, it would cause an impact stronger than any All Might could produce without going super plus ultra, as the man said. He had been warned that if he had tried using it that day 10 months ago, his arm would be broken immediately. He wished that's all that happened. He looked down right now to see the damage. Due to his unique body, rather than break his arm, the cost for using one for all at 100% was his arm literally being used up to counter the recoil. In other words, below his elbow was nothing. He had to physically will his arm to go back to how it was, to its natural state of having two arms. He had to push the energy inside him towards his elbow and remind it of the shape it was supposed to have. He didn't know if it was the adrenaline or if he was just going numb, but it was going much better than it had last time. Like all he had to do was give the shape, the energy would be supplied from somewhere. He looked up, startled, to see that recovery girl was kissing his newly formed and shining right arm. She looked like she was going to hit him, but before he could even make a case for himself, he was out like a rock. His body done with his bullshit and forcing him to get some much-needed rest. Chapter 8. UA High School. Man, this is a huge door, Izuku thought to himself as he walked through the door, probably for giant students. Don't put your feet on the desk. Record for shit to happen in class. I haven't even actually entered the room yet. Did your old school shove a stick up your ass? Or were you born with it? Izuku snickered at Katsuki's response to the blue-haired glass-wearing guy. Mr. Blue Hair clearly didn't like that as he turned around to see Izuku putting his bag on his assigned table. What exactly is so funny? I found it quite crass and rude of him to say such a thing to a classmate and dash. Oh hey, it's you. The man was interrupted by a girl walking through the door and pointing at Izuku with a cheer. She had brown hair in a bob style and he had no idea who she was, but she looked really familiar. Kirby. Izuku smacked Katsuki's arm before turning back to the girl. Yeah, it's me. Good to see you too, sorry, what's your name again? The girl stared at him. You have no idea who I am, do you? Izuku scratched his chin awkwardly. Yes, that would be correct. She chuckled before introducing herself. I'm Uraraka Ochako. We met at the entrance exam near the big robot? Oh, the one with the legs stuck in rubble. Yep, the one with the legs stuck in rubble. If you're here to make friends, get lost. Most of the class jumped in surprise. A yellow caterpillar? Was the unanimous thought of the whole class. I'm Shota Aizawa, the man said as he crawled out of the bag and pulled out UA tracksuits. Now put these on and come to the training ground in 5 minutes. A quirk assessment test? The class exclaimed. What about the orientation? Uraraka asked. If you're going to be pros, you won't have time for such leisurely activities. Aizawa-sensei retorted. UA is famous for how unrestrictive its school traditions are. That also applies to us teachers. You've done physical fitness tests in your middle school, right? Aizawa asked. You'll be doing those tests, but with your quirks. The country still uses averages taken from results without involving quirks. It's not rational. Well, the Ministry of Education is just procrastinating. Midoriya, he suddenly faced Izuku. You had the highest score in the practical, right? What was your best result in the softball throw in middle school? 85 meters, sir. Do it, but use your quirk, Sensei instructed. Izuku walked to the circle on the field. You can do whatever you want, just don't leave the circle. What should I do to make this go as far as possible? In the middle of this thought process, his eyes met Katsuki's. Izuku knew what he was going to do. He stood in the circle facing the class. He started spinning. He was spinning so fast it looked like a tornado of light, and the wind was starting to stir up as well. Now, he used that momentum to throw it far, far away into the distance, away from UA. Aizawa-sensei showed the class the screen showing the distance the ball had flown. 1705 meters? The class chorused together, "That's crazy. This looks so fun," a girl with pink skin said, grinning ear to ear. Fun, huh? How's this for fun? Whoever comes last in the class in the 8 exercises will be expelled immediately. That sobered them up quickly. It's irrational to waste time saying results out loud one by one. So just look for where you are on this, said Aizawa-sensei as he flipped the phone to display a hologram with the rankings of all 20 of Class 1A. Izuku Midoriya, Shoto Todoroki, Katsuki Bakugo, Momo Yaoyorozu, Denki Kaminari, Tenya Ida, Mizo Shoji, Fumikage Tokoyami, Masahiro Ojiro, Ijiro Kirishima, Rikido Sato, Chako Uraraka, Mina Ashido, Tsuyu Hanta Siro, Koji Koda, Yuga Aoyama, Kyoka Jiro, Minoru Mineta, Toru Hagakure. The invisible girl trembled as Aizawa-sensei closed the hologram. Also, I lied. No one's getting expelled today, he said with a grin. What? Yelled out most of the class, including Katsuki and Izuku. It was a ruse to help you bring out your full potential, he explained. Also, he said, his gaze suddenly turning sharp, Mineta. I'm letting you off with a warning this time, but don't think I didn't see how you've behaved today. I haven't expelled you yet because you have potential to be a hero, but I won't tolerate this behavior. Mineta nodded, terrified, but it didn't seem like he truly got it, judging by how he was leering at Momo's chest when no one was looking. Or more like, when he thought no one was looking. The fact that Aizawa-sensei would deceive us so is truly shameful for an institution as prestigious as UA. As a teacher he should blah 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 is what ran through the ears of the group walking outside the gate of UA with his friends Uraraka and Ida. While Momo was discussing this with him and Ochako was befriending Tetsutetsu and Itsuka, Katsuki and Izuku's focus was on the purple ball-haired teen from their class. They looked at each other before nodding. Hey guys, Izuku said. Me and Katsuki have a little thing to deal with. Won't take more than a minute. Oh, no problem, said Uraraka cheerfully while the rest nodded. We'll wait. Just go to the station, Pink Cheeks, Katsuki said. We'll catch up to you extras later. Thud asterisk. Mineta whimpered as he saw the imposing figure of one Katsuki Bakugo looming over him. Why, you can't do this. Mineta cried out, my mother's on the board of directors. I'll get you two expelled. Do what? Asked Izuku Midoriya, who had been standing there the whole time. Tell you to respect boundaries? We haven't touched you yet, Short Stack, Bakugo said. But that doesn't mean I particularly mind. Didn't you hear me? Sobbed Mineta. My mom's on the board of directors. Yeah, and we don't care, shrugged Midoriya. It wouldn't matter even if your mother's the goddamn president of the country. Harassment is harassment. Yeah, and so, I repeat, Bakugo said as he shoved Mineta against a wall before flashing a symbol on his phone. Do anything inappropriate, and we will not only file a complaint for the school to do its stuff, we'll personally give you suitable judgment, capice? Mineta's eyes widened. He knew that symbol. It belonged to a group of students during junior high that acted like impromptu vigilantes against other students who went out of line. With the government's support. Why you two are part of the Junior Hawkeyes group? Part of it. Bakugo snorted. We're the goddamn founders. Why are you only targeting me? Kaminari said pervy stuff too. Yeah, but he didn't try sneaking a peek like you did. Nor did he actually do anything weird other than a few jokes. Midoriya said. It's personal too though, you see, he said. His usually bright green eyes so dull, they might as well have been black. Our very good friend who did get enough points to get into the hero course didn't because apparently some higher up pulled some strings to push someone else into the hero course. We ain't gonna tell you to drop out, said Katsuki. This isn't us threatening you. It's a warning. You should train hard. Minetaku Midoriya said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, because Hitoshi Shinso will be coming for your spot in the sport festival. Rang out a familiar voice, coming through the door like a normal person. Holy shit, it's All Might. That's his Silver Age costume, right? It's so retro it's giving me chills. I will be your foundational heroics teacher. This class is what will give you the basic knowledge needed to be a hero. For the first exercise, we'll be doing combat training. Combat training, Katsuki muttered before looking straight at Izuku with a grin. Izuku glared back at his friend with a matching grin. Bring it. What fighting spirit. But first you'll need these, All Might said as he pressed a button, and the class's hero suits came out of the wall. Get changed and meet me in ground beta in 10 minutes. They say the clothes make the man. Rejoice, students. From this moment on, you are heroes. Wana walked out of the tunnel, all of them adorned in their hero suits. While all of them looked great in their own way, but the ones who stood out the most were Katsuki with his grenade-themed suit, Todoroki, who had covered half his body in ice, Ida in his night-type armor, and last but definitely not least Izuku with his Jedi-inspired suit. His costume consisted of a dark green bodysuit underneath everything with padded boots covered in a grayish coat and dark green cape. On his side was a blunted katana, which was made with a light conducting metal to enhance the applications of his quirk. All Might Sensei, Ida asked while raising his hand robotically, will we be conducting urban battles again? Not quite, young Ida. While the most known thing about heroes is the fact that they fight villains in broad daylight, the truth is the real evildoers work behind closed doors. This exercise will be an imitation of that, with battles among you students. Without basic training? Azui questioned. This is a real battle to understand those basics, All Might exclaimed. How will wins and losses be determined? Momo asked. Can we beat them up anyway? Kaken asked. Will the punishment be expulsion like with Aizawa-sensei? Ochako questioned. Isn't this cape just crazy? Oyama sparkled. Will you be splitting us up based on chance or comparative skill? Tenya asked. I'll answer all your questions, All Might promised. Young Yaoyorozu, young Bakugo, young Ida. I will explain it all momentarily. Young Uraraka, no expulsions here. Young Aoyama. Yes, your cape is magnificent. He actually got them all, Izuku said to himself. Teams will be decided randomly, he said at the end to answer Ida's question. Sensei. The glasses-wearing teen raised his hand again. Is such an approach truly the best idea? Think about it, Izuku spoke up, directing the entire class's attention to himself. Pros end up teaming up a lot of times, and it's not like they get to choose who their partner may be. Exactly, young Midoriya, All Might's voice boomed. Randomizing your teams here tests your ability to adapt. After a quick bow and thank from Ida, All Might continues. Now then, teams will be sorted one by one from this box of numbers. Come one by one and pick out a team. The two who have the same team written on their papers will obviously be partnered. Izuku stood with his partner aka Ochako Uraraka aka the girl he had helped from the zero-pointer in the exam. What's the plan, Midoriya-kun? She asked energetically. Well, he said, scratching his head a bit. I'm sure that Katsuki's gonna jump me the first chance he gets. so I'll hold him off while you either capture him from behind or go to the bomb alone while I hold him off." She looked at him amazed. "I was expecting something like, go full force, but you came up with an actual strategy." It was his turn to look at her now. Going full force would be fun too, but honestly I'm itching to fight Katsuki too so. "Oh, do you two not like each other?" He blinked. "Huh? Oh no, we're great friends. We've known each other since I can remember. It's just that we're also rivals, so every time we get to fight each other it's fun. So, it's like a fated battle between rivals." Izuku pondered for a bit before looking straight at her. "Yeah, it's a fated battle between rivals. For some reason that fired Uraraka-san more than me, but what works, works I guess. All right, hero team, your time starts now." And then they were off. Exactly like how Izuku had predicted, Katsuki rounded the second-floor corridor with an explosive kick to Izuku's face. Izuku ducked back and pulled Uraraka out of the range too. He made eye contact with her, and she nodded before going down another corridor, leaving the two behind to have their fated battle between rivals. "I wanted us to fight without worrying about the actual test," Izuku said with a grin at Katsuki's confused face. "Can't go all out if we're worried about other things now, can we?" Katsuki had a bloodthirsty grin that matched Izuku as he pulled out a collapsible metallic staff from a leg pocket. "Got that right." Izuku pulled out his katana and got into a stance with his right elbow behind his head. Katsuki rushed at Izuku with explosions coming from behind him and a right hook ready. Izuku didn't even try to dodge the fist, phasing through it in a burst of white light and reappearing behind Katsuki. Izuku used his light energy to lengthen his blade and struck the still-turning Katsuki right in the shoulder. The blonde growled but said nothing, instead opting to use his staff to deflect the barrage of thrusts from Izuku's lengthened blade. Izuku cursed under his breath as he realized why his light blade wasn't just phasing through the staff. While his quirk let him and his attacks be unaffected by physical attacks like the right hook Katsuki had started with, attacks like Katsuki's explosions or the wind force from All Might's punches still very much hit. To deflect his attacks, Katsuki was releasing miniature explosions from the tip of his staff to be able to counter Izuku. Well then, if long range wouldn't work, all he had to do was close the distance. The fated battle between rivals. Izuku was covered in the familiar light of his flow state as he launched himself at Katsuki in a flash of white light. The blonde had to squint a bit at the sudden flash, but his reflexes were sharp enough to dodge the attack at his face by going down into a sweeping kick. Izuku jumped up, launching himself from the ceiling and struck with his right leg. 15% Manchester smash. Katsuki blasted back, managing to avoid the hit completely. The floor hadn't though, and both of them fell through the spreading cracks down to the ground floor. Izuku landed first and looked up immediately to see a huge blast coming towards him. It took everything he had to escape the impact. In the earpiece he heard All Might Sensei talk about how reckless it was and that if Katsuki tried to pull something like that again he would have the blonde disqualified. "What was that?" Izuku asked his friend. "I stored up sweat in these." Katsuki gestured to his arm gauntlets. "And release it all together. You got the result, I think." Izuku nodded. Big boom. They both rushed each other, unleashing a flurry of hits from their respective weapons. In the monitor room, the entire class looked on as both of them fought so aggressively the foundations of the building started shaking. "This is crazy," Mineta cried out. "Crazy good," Kirishima yelled with manly tears running down his face. "So manly. How is it possible to be this good at combat at our age?" Ida said out loud. All Might, who had heard this comment, decided to tell the students something about the two. "Allow me to answer you, young Ida. Both young Midoriya and young Bakugo were actually judged by the Hero Association as fit to be sidekicks to heroes like me and Endeavor before they even applied for this school. They refused for their own reasons, but you can clearly see why." Most of the class, except a few like Yaoyorozu who already knew, and Todoroki, he narrowed his eyes because that's his thing apparently, had their jaws on their ground. Midoriya-kun. Izuku didn't falter for a second as he heard Uraraka's voice in his earpiece. Just jumped back and touched the mic with his hand to respond. "Yeah. Ida-kun found me. I'm stalling for now, but I could use help. Don't be getting distracted now. Before Izuku could respond, he was hit by a blast from his side, launching him and causing him to actually bounce on the ground before getting back up. He had an idea, though. He sent out a beacon of light with the thickness of a pen through the floors, till it reached the third. I just sent up a line of light up. Do you see it? He whispered to his partner as he picked up his fallen blade and threw it at Katsuki, who was ducked to dodge. Yeah, I see it. I'm gonna continue my fight. Just say now when it's right behind Ida. Okay. Okay, she said, seemingly understanding his plan. You've been ignoring me for a while. Izuku had to backflip to dodge the explosion. Wordlessly, he launched himself at Katsuki, using simple martial arts enhanced with the flow state to go back and forth with the blonde. His friend grinned, threw away his staff and responded in kind, using blasts to boost his hits. Izuku made sure to keep moving around, making sure that light beacon he had sent made its way around until Midoriya Kun now. With a grin, Izuku kicked Katsuki away and launched himself up. Uraraka had been taunting Ida, mainly just making fun of rules. When she made fun of the dress code, she was pretty sure he actually growled. Obviously, she didn't enjoy this, but she had to make sure Ida didn't notice the line of white light coming from the floor. She had done her best to make sure he didn't notice by walking in a slow circle so that it was behind him, and when the line was about a meter behind him, she gave her teammate the signal. She had assumed Midoriya would send up a distraction or something to give her an opening. Instead, the floor shattered as Midoriya flew through the opening, glowing and a crazy grin on his face. Realizing her chance, Uraraka ran like hell to grab the bomb. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Ida be kicked in the torso, sending him flying while Midoriya panted, wiping some sweat from his head. Hero team wins, All Might declared in their comms. Could anyone tell me who the MVP was? Izuku and the other three stood along with the rest of their class as All Might Sensei stood beside the monitors, the screens showing multiple points from the whole thing. While most of the class chorused Izuku's name, Sensei, Momo raised her hand at the back. I believe it was Ida-san. She flashed Izuku an apologetic look, but continued. Midoriya and Bakugo left their respective teammates behind to fight. While Uraraka-san's stalling was definitely crucial to the plan, it was Ida-san who actually did his part. She said more than I was going to sweat-dropped All Might. All correct, young Yaoyorozu. Rest of the battles go the same. Settle down, said Aizawa-sensei, getting out of his yellow sleeping bag. Today you will be. Everyone tensed, waiting to hear what crazy trial their sensei was going to give them next. Selecting a class representative. It's a normal school thing, everyone thought in relief. Then, pick me. I'll do it. If I become class pres, girls will have to show 30 cm of thigh. I'll kill you, grapist. Calm down, everyone. Everyone flinched and looked at the now standing Ida. The position of class representative is one that must be for the people and by the people. I suggest we vote. Wouldn't everyone vote for themselves? Questioned Tsuyu. That is precisely why the one with multiple votes is the most deserving of the position. Will you allow this? Ida asked Aizawa-sensei. Sensei was already in his sleeping bag, and just replied with a sleepy, I don't care, just be done in 10 minutes. Izuku munched on a bite of his katsudon as he looked up to see Itsuka and Tetsu approaching. They both greeted everyone with a yo and sat down with whatever they were eating. How was All Might's class? Tetsu asked earnestly. We have him tomorrow. All Might Sensei has provided us with invaluable practical experience that will surely benefit us for years to come, and I can only commend the way he. While Ida continued his speech, Uraraka answered the silver-haired teen's question. He made us do a battle stimulation, and Midoriya-kun and Bakugo-kun had a fated battle between rivals. Again, she had a weird fire in her eyes when she said that. That wasn't the only weird thing, though, because Katsuki actually snorted into his super spicy ramen before looking up in confusion. What did you just say, pink cheeks? Before Uraraka could finish her sentence, an alarm blared. There is a level 3 security breach. All students please evacuate in a calm and orderly fashion. What does level 3 security breach mean? Itsuka asked a third year who was rushing by them. It means someone's managed to get onto the school grounds. This has never happened in my 3 years here. You all should get out of here too, he said frantically before running towards the exit corridor. While everyone was pushed by each other in what could only be called a mob, Izuku, who just phased through the pushing, and Katsuki, who was too intimidating to push apparently. The blonde wasted no time in looking around, before directing his attention to Ida, who was pointing at the windows and yelling something Izuku couldn't quite hear. It's the fucking media, Katsuki cursed. As the two looked through the window as well to see what was going on, the NPCs are going to kill themselves if this goes on. Izuku didn't answer, instead opting to use his quirk to create a huge flash of bright white light, causing everyone to look at him wildly. It's just the media, he yelled at the top of his voice. Everyone calm down. Help the trampled students and let's finish our food like normal civilized people. Everyone stared at him, but a few people, with a small surge of pride, Izuku realized most of those were his own classmates, started helping people up, and slowly but surely, the mob had gone back to whatever they were doing. The press should not be able to do this. You got that right, said Present Mike, who was standing at the disintegrated main gate along with Eraserhead, Principal Nizu, and Recovery Girl. Nizu observed the scene but stayed silent. We have to sweep the school first, said Eraserhead. Like I said, the press can't have done this. Nizu shook his head. No villain will still be in there. I'm sure of it. Still, Aizawa insisted, and Recovery Girl nodded in agreement. Very well, Nizu sighed. I suppose a quick check can't be detrimental. While Eraserhead and Present Mike left to do as told, Nizu still just stood there. Is this just a simple act of violence, pondered Nizu, or a declaration of war? The students of Class 1A stood in front of the giant facility as Aizawa-sensei went off somewhere to bring their mystery teacher. It looks like Universal Studios Japan, Kaminari called out. Just as he said that, their teacher came back. This is the unforeseen simulation joint. Like I said in the class, you'll be doing rescue training here. I'll let the specialists tell you the rest. Hello everyone, called out a hero in a spacesuit. I'm going to be your surprise teacher. Oh my god, ITS 13, Uraraka gushed out. Your favorite hero? Izuku guessed. Yeah. 13's been my favorite since I can remember. Oi 13, where's All Might? He should have been here right now. Izuku couldn't hear everything, but judging by the fact that 13 put up 3 fingers, he assumes All Might had hit his limit for today. Anyway, 13 cleared their throat. I have something to say to you all, or maybe 2 things or 3. Anyway, I have a lot of things to say to you all. You all know what my quirk is? It's black hole. Yeah, you've used to it, save so many people, Uraraka said energetically. It could just as easily kill someone. The general mood darkened at that. I'm sure a lot of us here agree with me when I say that our quirks, while great to help someone, could easily cause harm to others as well. In Aizawa-sensei's assessment test, you were made aware of your limits, and in All Might's class, you learned how to use your quirks in combat. Today, you will be learning how to rescue people. With that, he bowed as the class clapped. They all stopped soon though and turned to see black mist in the center plaza. Whoa, Kirishima called out, fake villains? I thought we were doing rescue today. Aizawa-sensei cut him off. Those are real villains. 13. Get them out of here and contact UA. With that, he was off, taking down villains one by one. Pardon the intrusion, but we, the League of Villains, have invited ourselves to the home of the heroes in order to end the symbol of peace, All Might. One of 13's finger caps opened as she tried to suck in Kurogiri, but had to stop when Kirishima tried to jump the villain and Bakugo had to pull the redhead back by the legs to avoid being sucked in by the villain. Don't get in the pro's way, you idiot, the blonde roared. But the damage was done. In the few seconds everyone had been distracted, Kurogiri's smoke had surrounded everyone, and one by one their classmates started disappearing in purple clouds. There was a bright flash of light, and everyone turned to see Izuku with his blade stabbed into the ground, releasing a huge wave of light to stop Kurogiri from splitting the class anymore. 13 tried to attack again, but was taken down when Kurogiri warped her black hole suction at her own back, shredding the suit and her back. Izuku slashed with a huge blade of light, but it just passed through the smoke harmlessly. The green-haired teen glanced around quickly to assert the situation. 6 of his classmates plus him were still here, and the rest were still within the USJ, judging by the sudden appearance of ice at the landslide zone and the explosions in the fire zone. He launched a few solar/yes, a much smaller form of the solar flare he had used against the slime villain, before jumping back to his classmates. Uraraka-san, Hagakure-san, and Shiro-kun, please help 13 out. Shoji-kun and Sato-kun, break the door when I give the signal, please. Ida-kun, I need you to get out of here and alert the pros. While the other 4 moved immediately, Ida started protesting, saying it would be shameful and unheroic to leave them in this moment of peril. I get that, Izuku interrupted, but the most heroic thing you could do right now is get us help. If we want this moment of peril to eventually end, we need the heroes. The only one with the speed and endurance to get them on time is you. Faced with the cold, hard truth, all Ida could do was nod before getting in position. Foolish to discuss your plan in front of your enemy, Kurogiri's voice boomed. But I suppose you have no choice there. Now, yelled out Izuku before releasing the brightest flash of light he possible could from his hands, right into Kurogiri's face. At the same time, both Sato and Shoji put all their strength into forcing open the metal doors of the USJ, leaving the path open for Ida. With a roar of his engines, the bespectacled teen was off. Kurogiri had retreated too, leaving Izuku with his classmates and the injured 13. Hagakure-san, Uraraka-san, and Shoji-kun, get to the announcement box and tell everyone who got warped that they have to come back here. Be as vague as possible to avoid villain ambushed, please. The 3 nodded and made way to the nearby watchtower. What are you going to do? Asked Zero. Izuku replied by taking out his blade and activating his flow state. Thin the herd. Aizawa-sensei, no Eraserhead, was taking down the grunts one by one, but he was starting to slow down. All the villains looked up, though, when they saw a bright comet passing by above. They started to run away when the comet turned towards them. With a bang, about 20 villains were knocked out as Izuku Midoriya stood up from where the comet had landed. Yo, he said with a grin. What do you think you're doing? Eraserhead said furiously as he kicked a villain in the face before grabbing his head and banging it against another villain's head. I told the class to evacuate. Change of plans, Izuku grimly reported as he used his solar flare to knock out 3 villains before turning into a white blur that knocked out 8 more. The purple one spread most of the class among the facility, and 13 is down for now. At that moment, they heard Hagakure's voice through the intercom. To all 1A members, the class prez has ordered you to return where you were split from. I repeat, return where you came from. That's one thing out of the way, Izuku muttered as he sidestepped a knife made of plastic. What even? Before punching the villain in the face. They did good. Good call, Eraserhead nodded as he looked towards the 3 main villains who hadn't moved an inch since Izuku fell there. Time to get the big fish. I'm trusting you to pull your weight since the HPSC figured your pro level. Izuku just nodded. Mon. I seriously hate it when pro heroes live up to the hype. The blue-haired guy with hands all over him groaned before suddenly rushing and grabbing Eraserhead's elbow. To Izuku's horror, it started to break, and Izuku could almost see the muscle below the skin before it suddenly stopped. He moved quick, punching the villain's arm to push it away from his teacher before bringing down the flat side of his blade to knock out Handyman in one clean strike. To his surprise, the man managed to grab his blade and actually pulled it out of his grip before throwing it away. Izuku retreated, stepping in front of Aizawa to cover the injured man. I'm guessing you're the final boss, Izuku said with false bravado. Gotta say, the hand stuff is throwing me off. What's your villain name? Handjob? Handjob growled before suddenly smiling. I'm not the final boss at all, you brat. Nomu here is. Nomu, kill. And then the Black Hulk ripoff moved. Izuku didn't know how in the world he managed to react, but he did, kicking Eraserhead away while using both arms to block the blow released by the monster. Normally, a punch would just phase through him, giving him the chance to counter. Training with Yagi-sensei, however, had showed something else. Hits that would impact his whole body rather than the arms or whatever could very much send him back flying. Dagoba Municipal Beach had the trenches in the sand to prove it when he and Yagi-sensei had sparred and the blonde man decided to go above his self-imposed 40% limit and really hit Izuku. The same thing happened here. Izuku was ripped off his feet and crashed through like four trying to stand villains and straight into the wall. He could feel the metallic taste of blood in his mouth too. Well, this ought to be interesting. In a flash, get it? He was back in front of the Nomu with a kick already aimed for the neck. He hit it with as much force it had unleashed around Izuku when he used 55% of One for All. But it didn't even so much as flinch, just absorbing the blow before putting its hands up to grab Izuku. Izuku had learned his lesson from the first blow though, and jumped up before using the Nomu's beak as a launch pad to land in front of his sensei, who was now done bandaging his arm and was ready to get back into action. Eraserhead, I'll deal with big, bad and ugly here. You deal with the other two, please. His teacher didn't even try to protest, instead opting to nod and leaving to do so after saying just one sentence. Be careful, problem child. Izuku ran in circles around Nomu, trying to confuse the very clearly not intelligent creature. Out of the corner of his eye, he could see Eraserhead Sensei going back and forth, using his scarf to maintain distance while erasing both his opponent's quirks to ensure they didn't interfere with Izuku's battle. Speaking of Izuku's battle, the green-haired teen had to jump when the Nomu had enough and stamped the ground so hard it actually released a small shockwave and cracked the ground below Izuku's feet. He leaped up, reaching for a nearby wall before using to spring himself towards the Nomu. Flash arrow, he called out as he used his newly improvised move to put everything he had into using himself like an arrow to hit the Nomu straight in the chest, but it didn't even move back a bit. With a silent curse, he jumped back and used the instant he had to counter to put 100% of OFA into his right fist. Detroit Smash! He roared as his fist rushed at the Nomu, and coincidentally hit the exact same spot he had just kicked. To his surprise, it actually went flying for a bit before landing on his feet. Upon looking closely, he saw that the place he had just hit was actually a bit paler than the rest of the black skin of the Nomu. To his disappointment, though, that grayish patch disappeared as the Nomu's regeneration kicked in. Izuku understood it now. As long as he used enough speed and enough force to hit the same spot, the Nomu's shock absorption would hit its limit at that spot and Izuku's hits would do the damage they should. Easier said than done. You'd have to be at the level of All Might or Endeavor's output of pure destruction and force. I'll do it then, he roared with a grin as he surpassed his limits right there. Overflow. Overflow was basically the flow state turned up to a 100. OFA and his original quirk danced together throughout his body at 100% each as he felt his body destroy and fix itself. Thankfully, it was happening so fast his brain didn't have the time to actually register the pain. Otherwise, he'd probably rolling on the floor, crying. The Nomu, not having the brain power to understand the tides, had just completely shifted, rushed forward with its right fist cocked back for a big-ass punch like before. However, unlike before, when Izuku would have had to dodge to avoid becoming a Mido pancake, he just returned the punch and both their fists met each other midway. The roof rattled and the earth under their feet cracked as the impact of just that one punch released a shockwave that actually sent the unconscious villains closest to them flying away to the shocked Shigaraki and Eraserhead Sensei, whose fight had continued till now. This meant nothing to both Izuku and the Nomu though, and the two monsters brought forward their other hand to take down their enemy, and then their free hand and then the other. The barrage of punches they unleashed were so strong everyone in the USJ felt it in their bones, and it took everything a lot of them had to simply not fall down because of the strong trembling. An earthquake? Questioned Jiro, who along with the dumb Ifid Kaminari and Momo had been making their way from the mountain zone to the entrance. No, Momo murmured under her breath. She knew this energy, had spent more than half her life with the user of this energy, and so she ran until her feet were on fire and she was able to look onto the central plaza. Sure enough, there was Izuku, exchanging blows with that black monster so fast that both the combatants' hands were blurs. Is that class rep? Her new friend nearby gaped as she made her way to where Momo was too. He's seriously holding up against that thing? Holding up? Did Jiro not see what Momo was seeing? In front of her own eyes, She could see her closest friend destroying his own body to fight something he should not even lay his eyes on for at least 5 more years. For anyone else, it would be hard to see anything through the blur of fists. But Momo was so used to seeing Izuku do things in a flash, she supposed her eyes were used to it. Not exactly a good thing in this situation, because she could see that every time Izuku's fists met the monsters, everything after his elbow actually shattered, before reassembling within a fraction of a second into a fist that Izuku could throw again. This way of fighting could only result in disaster. As expected, the regeneration of his arm was slower by barely a second, yet this was enough time for the monster to land a proper hit on her friend. She could only scream in despair as Izuku was hit point blank by a fist with the strength of Prime All Might. And what a hit it was. The boy flew halfway through the USJ, breaking through whatever was in his way like a missile before crashing into the ship at the flood zone. That ship had cracked straight through the middle from the impact, and started to sink right on top of Izuku's unmoving body. Where am I? Izuku was floating in some sort of void. It felt like he was floating through the clouds with how light he felt. He looked down to see what was going on, but gasped when he realized it. Or would have gasped, if it wasn't for the fact he had no mouth. No body, no legs, no arms either. Just his feet, his hands, and what felt like the part of his head above the nose. He looked around, trying to make sense of what was going on. I was fighting the Nomu and then I got hit. He tried to recollect everything from that moment he had taken the hit. He remembered that his body had started to hurt and suddenly, just for a second, he had frozen up because he saw Momo out of the corner of his eye, and she looked seriously freaked out. The last thing he had heard was her screaming too. I have to get out of here. Where exactly was here though? And how the hell was he meant to get out of here? Hello? He turned around to see a man shrouded in the same void that surrounded the two. He tried to speak, but was again stopped by the fact he didn't have a mouth. He just waved, slightly irritated by his lack of organs. I imagine you're quite confused, but we don't have the time to chat right now considering what's going on out there, the red-haired man said. As the man spoke, Izuku felt heavy, like he was being crushed from all sides. Around them, the world began to crack, and he could see blue light shine through the cracks and the weight on his body quadruple. No time at all, the man muttered before reaching out, no time to explain. Grab my hand to use my quirk and save your friends. Izuku was barely able to form a thought because of the sheer pain his body, visible or otherwise, was under. However, he did understand what the man said. Grab hand equals save friends. Without a second of hesitation, he threw his hand out to catch the man's, and the world faded to black again. Momo stood at the shores of the flood zone with Mineta, Jiro, and Uraraka. To her side was a pulley system she had just made using her quirk to pull the two halves of the broken ship apart. Tsuyu-san had been with them until she went back into the flood zone to find Izuku and get him out. Uraraka-san had already used her quirk on the pulley and the rope to make sure it was as light as possible to pull for her, Mineta, Jiro, and Uraraka to pull to ensure both her green-haired friends' survival. Behind her, she could hear the sounds of explosions as Katsuki and Kirishima battled the big monster that had hurt Izuku. She had been so much in panic, she only vaguely remembered Katsuki's arrival, immediate questioning, and when she was unable to say anything but babble things, slap her to calm her down and get them to work. She had to admit, his crudeness could be helpful sometimes. The thought that she could save Izuku hadn't even crossed her mind until he had said that he'd hold the Nomu, as it was apparently called, off until she got Izuku back in action. The faith he held in their friend, that he'd be back and ready to kick ass as he'd say, had opened her eyes. No one actually believed Izuku was gone. She had been the only one to react like he had left them permanently. She blinked the tears out of her eyes. She would confront this feeling later. Right now, she had to pull. Everyone fell to the ground again after the shockwaves from earlier, when they felt a huge impact from the middle of the water under the broken ship. She dared to hope, and that hope was only reinforced when she saw a huge pillar of light be released from the spot she had seen Izuku fall through. Judging by the scream of "Hell yeah" behind her, she knew Katsuki had understood too. Midoriya Izuku was back. Izuku looked around. The first thing he saw was Momo and a few of his classmates tugging on rope connected to some sort of mechanism connected to the half of the ship that had ended up straight on top of him. He blinked, trying to make sense of what was going on. The entire world felt so beautiful. He could feel everything. The gentle gust of wind from the cracked glass above blew, and the gentle warmth of the sun painted him in a golden light. He turned to see the central plaza when he heard an explosion, but all he could see were vague shapes of the people there. His eyesight had gone so bad even the Nomu just looked like a black blob. Wait, no, when Izuku tried to focus, everything went into HD like he had switched the video from 144p to 1080. He could even make out the individual expressions on the faces of the ones at the plaza. Katsuki's grin, Kirishima's shock, Aizawa-sensei's relief, the smoke guy looking like smoke as usual, and the handyman's anger. Oh, Izuku was falling now. All he had to think was that he'd rather not go down, and his body stopped going down. I can float now? That's new. He looked back down when he heard a commotion. It seemed like Tsuyu had just come back from under the water and told Momo and the others something shocking, because they were looking up at him and they looked seriously upset. A flicker of something black out of the corner of his vision, and he turned to see his reflection, except it couldn't be him. Izuku's quirk gave him light powers. His whole motif was bright light moves, not this black lightning. But that's what he saw in the water. Izuku was floating. His legs, up till the knees, and arms, up till his elbows, were covered in some sort of black metal, and his whole body was releasing some sort of black lightning. Around him, the water droplets from his sudden rise floated, like frozen mid-fall. From his back, he could see 4 black ropes reaching out to the heavens, and there seemed to be some purple smoke mixed with them. His eyes, normally a bright green, were bright red, and he instinctively knew that this had something to do with whatever was going on with his vision. Grab my hand to use my quirk and save your friends. Was this the red-haired guy's quirk? The ropes and smoke felt like something entirely different though, and black lightning shouldn't let him float like this. Izuku didn't exactly remember much of that shadowy place he had been in, but he vaguely remembered that there had been vague shapes behind the man too. Before he even knew what was going on, his hand was up with an open palm, killing the momentum of a giant rock. Giant rock? He turned to see that the Nomu was throwing stuff at him. The rock he had just stopped, a lamp post, 8 or so unconscious villains, and 2 more big rocks. Wait, what the foo? To both his and everybody else's shock, Izuku was able to weave through the projectiles and catch the villains before descending to put down the poor guys before turning to his friends. I'll explain later, he said strongly in a voice that didn't quite sound right. Then he jumped. He was there in an instant. With a quick flick of his fingers, Izuku released bursts of air pressure that tore Nomu's legs before dashing forward to neutralize the threat. Clearly, he still hadn't gotten the hang of this new power. He overshot the Nomu by a huge margin and ended up near where his sword had fallen. I wonder if... To his delight, when he picked up his weapon, it shone with the same black energy as his body, with the black lightning and everything. Get down! By the time Izuku registered the warning in his head, he was already down in a crouch and his sword halfway in an arc to slash Handyman, who was angled in a way that he would have gotten Izuku's head if the hero hadn't ducked when he did. The villain, who was as shocked as he was, had no choice but to completely take the attack Izuku unleashed, sending him skipping like a rock in a lake. Tamura Shigaraki, Kurogiri's voice finally showed a trace of emotion. Don't turn away from me, you smoky piece of Tsuchiiti. Katsuki roared out as he blasted the villain before putting his hand on some sort of metal collar. I knew you'd have a solid form, otherwise you wouldn't have tried to dodge shitty hair up there, the blonde said with a bloodthirsty grin. Our hair's basically the same, Kirishima protested. Above. Learning to trust these warnings now, Izuku leaped back to avoid the Nomu's large black fist from turning him mush. With a roar, Izuku swung his sword. Divine Departure. In a blast of black lightning, the beast was actually sent flying as Izuku suddenly fell on one knee. Wha. He coughed so hard that when he looked down he saw blood on his, now back to its normal color, hand. Shifting rocks and a loud curse from Katsuki to see the Nomu getting up, its entire body the same grayish color as when Izuku overloaded its shock absorption. Time to get back into it, he thought to himself as he got back up. He tried to lift his sword, but his arms wouldn't listen. Whatever, kicks are good too. Except he couldn't as much as take a step forward. I'll headbutt it to win if I have to, god damn it. Except his entire body was swaying, and he fell back onto his knees. Now was not the time for this. Izuku could barely stay conscious, and the charging monster was not exactly reassuring. Or it would have, but... I am here. A golden blur blasted through the metal doors, past the frozen students and threw a punch at the gray beast that threatened his successor. It gave no resistance. How could it, when the one who hit it was the strongest person in the country? The Nomu went flying again, and this time it struggled to get back up. All Might? Izuku whispered as his head finally hit the ground. Oh, thank God. Don't worry, young Midoriya. He heard the firm voice of his mentor, and looked up to see something that was scarier than anything else today. All Might was not smiling. I'll deal with this. Take a well-deserved rest. Wait! Izuku called out with a voice so weak, he could barely hear himself. It regenerates, and has shock absorption. Hit the same place a bunch of time and that place becomes gray. Gray means your hits will work. Unexpectedly, his mentor actually chuckled before putting his face in his palm. You can't even stand, but you still give me info like this? Seriously, what are you made of? But... His mentor rose up to his full height and gave Izuku a thumbs up. This tenacity is also one of the reasons I chose you. Your information is appreciated. With that, he was off. I barely have a minute left, All Might thought grimly to himself. But, I must do this. He rushed forward to meet the Nomu's fist with his own. Red-haired Shanks. This place again? Izuku stood in the same void as earlier, looking around for the red-haired man or any of the others he had seen before. Yo! He turned around to see the red-haired man appear out of the void. He nodded, still not having a mouth. My name is Shanks. I was the third user of One for All. Ignoring the stunned Izuku, the man came up to Izuku and put his palm where Izuku's mouth should have been, and to Izuku's relief his mouth was back. What did you just do? I have no idea, the man said with a chuckle. I have no clue how any of this works, kid. Anyway, he said, changing the topic, you must have questions. I'm here to answer them. Izuku's eyes slowly fluttered open to see the white ceiling of what he knew was Yue's infirmary. Finally awake, Sonny? He turned to see Recovery Girl approaching to check his pulse and pressing various joints and asking if they hurt. After that was done, she gave him a nod and sat back on the stool. You're all fixed up, kid. Your classmates have already all been sent home, and there won't be any classes till next Monday. Izuku nodded and finally stood on his own 2 feet. He was wobbly, but it was probably because of him being in the bed for so long. What happened after I fainted? He asked. All Might and the rest of the staff came and cleaned up. They said that the Mist and the hand villains made it out though. That Nomu thing got taken by the HPSC. You can ask Toshinori the details later, she said with a dismissive wave as she turned to whatever paperwork she was filling. With a quick thanks, Izuku was out of the infirmary. You're saying you met the third user of One for All? Yeah. You talked to one of the past users? Yes, sensei. Yagi-sensei stood beside Izuku at Dagoba Beach. It had been a day since the USJ, informing Yagi-sensei what exactly had gone down. And you have all the past users' quirks? That's what he said, sensei. The man pinched his brows as he muttered something unintelligible before looking at Izuku. And what else did Shanks tell you? Mainly that normally One for All would have reduced the lifespan of someone who wasn't quirkless by a lot, but because of how my quirk works, the two more or less exist in sync with each other. Ah, guess we both got lucky then. What do you mean? I was quirkless before I got this power, Toshinori said as he clenched his fist and the telltale light of One for All shone from his palms. My master saw me rush to do something crazy and decided I was worthy. A lot like what you did actually, but I had zero training, so much more reckless. Izuku chuckled at that. It wasn't too hard to imagine the blonde man beside him rush to save those who needed saving, powers or not. It was just who he was, and the need to save people was ingrained in his body, much like how it needed oxygen. Anyway, Izuku said, looking up as he saw the sun rise from the horizon. Shanks said that even though I should have them all now, rather have to unlock them one by one, I wouldn't be able to use them all unless I really need to. He told me to focus on his quirk, Haki, for now because it would make it easier to learn the rest. Toshinori nodded. Red-haired Shanks was a very famous pirate from more than 100 years ago. Izuku turned sharply. Shanks-san was a villain? Oh gods no, he sputtered. He was a very good man. He was only ever noted to steal from those who were cruel and villainous. He even ended a war between pirates and the Marines as a third party back then, and because of the sheer respect he had from both pirates and Marines, they had no choice but to agree. How do you know all this? Toshinori looked down at his student with a grin. Being the #1 hero means I have access to a lot of resources, young Midoriya. All I had to do was ask one of my employees a report on who Shanks was, and I was given all I needed, including information about his quirk. It felt a lot like my quirk, actually, Izuku said as he clenched his fist and it turned into that metallic shade of black he now knew meant he was using Haki. Just sharper. And more forceful, if that makes any sense. From what the man once said during an interview with a reporter called Morgan's, he said his quirk is literally him enforcing his will on others. On his own body, his senses, or even on other people. They say that those with a weak will would not be able to stay conscious if he as much as walked near them. Izuku whistled. Think I'll be able to do that? That power has only grown stronger inside one for all, young Midoriya. It would be harder for you to not knock everyone out through sheer presence. Even that tiny amount of Haki covering your hand is emitting enough waves that I'm having to actively stop myself from transforming. Sheepishly, Izuku deactivated the Haki and put his hand back into his pocket. So what now? Now they both turned to see a certain old man in a yellow hero suit with a walking cane exiting a car. You train with me again, kid? Oh hell nah. A few days later, the students were back in their classes. Most from 1A were displaying their regular behavior. Whether it was due to them being mentally strong, or due to the fact that they didn't actually know that Izuku had almost died, was unclear. There was one student, other than Izuku and Katsuki, who knew though. For this past week, Momo Yaoyorozu had felt nothing but worry. She couldn't get the sight of Izuku's unresponsive body crashing through that ship and sinking with it. The thought that he could have really died there paralyzed her every time that she thought it. They had talked quite a bit on call and through texts, but that had done little to assure her. Until she saw him with her own eyes, actually knew that he was really fine, this knot in her chest would not disappear. Which is why when he walked through the door with Katsuki, going off about how he didn't want the 10th anniversary special All Might banner as much as needed it, she finally relaxed. Oh, thank God. She mumbled under her breath as she hunched over the desk and stopped herself from crying tears of relief. You good, Momo? She jumped a bit, startled to see that the boy she had been so worried about right in front of her. Palm on her forehead as he looked at her in concern. If you don't feel at 100% yet, you should go to the infirmary and rest up, he said as he pulled out a thermos with green tea from his bag and handed it to her. Have some. Mori-sensei said that it's great for relaxing. She felt like screaming that he should be the one resting after a fight like that, but could only accept with a small smile as he leaned on Minetta's table and looked at something on his phone. She opened her mouth to say something, but was interrupted by a shout of, Midoriya-kun. Both of them looked to the door to see Uraraka-san charging in before stopping right in front of Izuku. You're fine, she said as she put a hand on her heart. I was so worried about you. Izuku said as he scratched the back of his head awkwardly. Thanks, Uraraka-san. I was worried about you too. She flashed a smile so bright it actually looked like she had glowing teeth before she turned to go back to her desk. Momo couldn't help but feel a tightness in her chest again, albeit a different kind. I am. Izuku and his friends whipped around to the door to see what was going on. Here to ask Midoriya Shounen to lunch, All Might Sensei said as he suddenly appeared with a burst of wind while bowing. He's like a maiden, Uraraka chuckled. Izuku looked at his friends for confirmation, and at their nod, he went off with all might. So, your time went down by 30 minutes, Izuku sighed as he sat on the couch in front of All Might's chair. It took a week for me to be sure of how much time I lost, All Might said, not really looking upset. If you'd weakened it any less, I'm sure I'd have lost at least an hour, kid. You did good. Izuku nodded. Now then, on to the actual reason you're here. I hadn't mentioned it yet because I thought that the threat was gone, All Might said as he sat down with a heavy sigh. I'm going to tell you about the true origins of One for All. Class rep, we need your help. Izuku looked up from his seat to see that the classroom door had been blocked by a sea of students. What's going on here? He questioned as he walked to the door. What can we do for you all? They're here to scout the competition, Katsuki said as he stood behind Izuku. We're the class that fought off villains after all. Now that you've seen what actual pro material looks like, get out of the way, he said with a sneer on his face. Immediately, the crowd of students started yelling and throwing insults. Whoa, no need for all that. The sea of students parted as a purple-haired boy made his way through with zero resistance. I just wanted to see the kid named Mineta, Hitoshi said with a friendly smile, and to everyone's surprise his voice sounded a lot like a girl's. When Mineta heard he'd been called, he ran up to the door, probably thinking it must have been a beauty who had fallen for his irresistible charms. Where is the girl I need to save? He said in a voice he thought was suave, but actually sounded squeaky. No girl today, I'm afraid, Hitoshi said in his normal voice, as he squatted to get down to Mineta's height. Sorry for the false hope, but I just wanted to see what you looked like myself before the festival. Mineta looked confused before paling. And no, are you? The taller purple-haired teen looked confused for a second before turning to give Izuku a wry smile. It'd be too unfair if he didn't know, Izuku said as his friend stood back up to his full height with a chuckle. He turned back to Mineta. Yes, I'm Hitoshi Shinso, and I am the one who is after that seat of yours. With that he turned and walked back through the, yet again parted, sea of students. May the best man win, he said as he waved a hand. Class 1B will destroy you 1A elite wannabes. A blonde guy randomly shouted once Hitoshi was gone. You're welcome to try, Izuku said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Oi! Tetsu yelled as he grabbed the aggravated blonde by the scruff of his neck. Sorry about him, he called out to Izuku, who just nodded, this time with an actual smile. We have one of those too, he said as he gestured with a thumb to Katsuki, who looked annoyed by the sudden stray he had caught. You high and mighty Wanna students must think you're hot stuff after defeating those villains, the blonde guy said as he broke free from Tetsu's hold. But don't let that get to your head. We're Dash. He was interrupted by the cold gaze of Izuku Midoriya. Cocky? Get to our heads? He questioned. His gaze roamed over all the muttering students. Is this what you all think? Some of them shrunk back under his gaze, but others walked forward. We wanted to knock you down a peg. We're sure your heads are inflated. Hero course guys like you always have crazy ego. Look at that blonde guy. Shouts like this filled the hallway. I see. Everyone in the hallway, and even some of the students of his own class were forced onto their knees, and some even fainted on the spot. A group of your fellow had their lives in danger, and all you can think is what? That we must be so full of ourselves. He wasn't really aware of it yet, but waves of hockey were rolling off of him because of his anger. By just taking a step forward, most of the students were collapsed on the ground. We almost died, you fools. How can you dash? He was interrupted by an approaching fist. Behind. It was easy enough to dodge and grab the arm, but he couldn't help but gasp when he saw who it belonged to. Momo? You need to calm down, she said with sweat pouring down her head. He looked around her to see that his whole class, minus a few like Todoroki and Katsuki, were on the ground, panting. He blinked as he felt his anger disappear, replaced by guilt. I'm so sorry, he whispered. I am so sorry. It's not your fault, she said as she let go of his arm. I was going to do something too, just not that. They both looked through the doorway to see the situation. Tetsu was one of the only ones standing, and at one point someone had brought Itsuka too. What was that? He asked, and Izuku could see some metal on his hands and legs. I lost control, he said ashamed as he turned around. He couldn't bear to see that look of fear in both of their eyes. I swear, it won't happen again. Midoriya, he heard, and tensed when he saw Todoroki approach him. You did the right thing. Izuku did not expect that. Huh? While I can respect wanting to come into the hero course, completely disregarding the emotions felt by the ones attacked is moronic, the dual-haired teen said without mincing words, extreme you may have been. I can clearly see that you did not mean for this to happen. There's no need to feel guilt for protecting your friends, Kirishima said with a grin as he approached too. He saw the now basically recovered Class 1 and nodding their thanks at him. You guys. We're up in 5 minutes, Izuku announced as he walked into the waiting room. Everyone line up in order of seat numbers. Midoriya. Izuku turned around to see Todoroki-kun walking towards him. Considering your powers and analytical ability, you are the most likely to win this. Izuku's head tilted to the side in confusion. And All Might has his eyes on you. He just gave me some pointers on avoiding collateral damage, Izuku said casually. Not all of us can just make big ice walls after all. I don't plan on prying, Todoroki said, but it just means that I have all the more reason to beat you. Izuku actually chuckled at that. There was nothing funny in what I just said, Todoroki said with a frown. You're gonna have to reach me first, Todoroki-kun, Izuku said before turning his gaze towards their annoyed classmates. Believe it or not, there are more than 2 people in our class, not to mention the entirety of the first-year population. Todoroki said as if he understood his mistake. I apologize. I did not mean to disregard everyone here. I will beat you all before beating Midoriya. The distinct sound of palms hitting foreheads was what rang throughout the room. Welcome to the UA Hero Festival. Present Mick's voice called out as one finally reached the tunnel's opening to start off. Let's cheer on the fledgling heroes. First, the stars who overcame a villain attack all on their own. Class 1A. Amidst a storm of cheering and clapping, Izuku led his class to the middle of the stadium. Next are the hidden gems. They haven't gotten much screen time, but if you ignore them, you'll regret it. Here's Class 1B. After that, Present Mike introduced Classes C to K, flamboyantly. Time for the pledge, Midnight Sensei announced. Representing the students is the top ranker of both the hero and the general test, Izuku Midoriya. Everyone here, Izuku began, is sure to be strong. The ones from the hero course, the ones from the support course, the ones who were put in the general course. I don't think the business course really cares about the fighting but them too. Everyone here knows that it's not easy to get into UA. But we all made it here, and I'm sure we'll all go ahead with the same drive as we had to get here. With that, he raised his right hand. I vow today to fight with everything I have, and I hope to see us all go beyond, plus ultra. At the ending of his speech, the whole student body raised their arms to match his and yelled out the school motto. Plus ultra. You're good at speeches, Kirishima said with a chuckle. Izuku nodded. Took me 2 days to come up with that. That's enough. Midnight Sensei's voice rang out, and the ones who had been talking turned to see her pointing her whip at them. Now, let us begin the first event. The obstacle race. Oi! Stop pushing. Ow! Amidst all the pushing and shoving stood Izuku, hands in pockets as he stood at the back area of the crowd. Looks like we had the same idea. He turned to his left to see Momo walking towards him. Great minds think alike after all, he replied with a smile. She let out a small giggle before standing beside him. So, she began, how do you plan to get ahead? He pointed at the gap between the students and the roof of the tunnel. I can be there in a flash. Momo just stared at him for a second. Izuku rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. Kaminari-kun suggested I use more puns. She nodded. You can come up with something better than flash though. You do one then, he challenged. Don't underestimate me, Izuku. I can be quite crafty. A beat of silence. I give up, he said as he raised his hands. Once the festival is done, I'm asking you for a list of these. Anyway, how are you planning on getting up front? Rocket roller skates, she said casually. Rocket what now? Start. In a flash of light, Izuku sprang up into the air and kicked off. And they're off. It was a tight fit, but Izuku was able to do it. He launched himself through the gap above the students and landed in a roll to see Todoroki freeze the 0-pointers from the entrance exam. These guys again, he mused. Well, they're easy to blast through so. He closed his eyes, channeling one for all and glint through his body. 15% one for all, full flow. Flash arrow. In another flash of light, he launched himself straight through a falling 0-pointer before batting away a couple of 3-pointers with a single swing of his left arm. Since Mike Sensei just announced the second obstacle, I guess Todoroki-kuin's already there. Well, he thought to himself as he hopped in place to warm up his legs before crouching, nothing to worry about. Rather than a quick burst of energy, he went forward at a constant speed so fast it looked like an arrow made of light launched from a bow. Flash arrow, long version. Truly, his move's naming sense was like no other. He completely skipped the whole tightrope thing and most of the minefield before finally slowing down. And then, because he felt like giving his classmate a migraine would be fun, he sent out flicks of light energy from his fingers on all the mines in front of Todoroki. Obviously, they went off. Todoroki, Katsuki, Momo, Ida, and a blonde 1B guy whose name Izuku didn't remember. S-form were all hidden in a spectacular explosion of pink smoke. Due to the rule of aura when not looking at explosions, Izuku didn't see that. What he did see was the entrance back into the stadium, and the crowd cheering him on as he ran in and got his first place. He turned around to see Todoroki, then Katsuki followed by Ida, and then Momo follow him through like 20 seconds later. The winner of the first round is Izuku Midoriya. What did he even do? Eraserhead? He used his quirk for a simple rush through the whole thing. Some would call that unflashy, but getting from point A to point B as fast as possible is a very important factor for being a hero. Good to see you actually giving commentary. I had 17 shots of concentrated coffee earlier. What the hell is concentrated coffee? Ask Lunch Rush, he's the one who made it. Izuku. Izuku turned around to Itoshir, approaching him. Doing crazy things as usual, eh? Izuku just gave him a wry smile. Rather than take offense, his friend just chuckled. Yeah, I figured you wouldn't fall for that. Katsuki might, depending on what you insult, Izuku said with a grin as he looked at their friend, who was arguing with Todoroki about something. He's been complaining that he's shorter than me recently since middle school. Where the hell does he get the energy for that? Itoshir, Aizawa's second coming, Shinso muttered as their blonde friend started yelling. You just have zero energy, Izuku said with a shake of his head. Not my fault, I'm an insomniac, he muttered. I've offered knocking you out multiple times. I prefer my face looking like a face. Thank you very much. I'm screwed, Izuku thought to himself as he saw everyone give him looks of hunger when they heard the whole 1,000,000 points thing. Couldn't have been 1,000 or something? Directly jumping to 1,000,000 feels excessive. Well, he honestly didn't mind doing it alone, but figuring out a way to stay in the air the whole time might be tricky since he can't use the 7 float yet. You, number 1, let me into your team. He turned to see a pink-haired girl approach him while decked out in equipment. Could you tell me who you are first? Mei Hatsum, support course. I came here because being with you could get my babies a lot of attention. While Izuku internally wondered if she had a baby in that bag that she planned on throwing or something, Uraraka came up to him too. Midoriya-kun, let's team up. Uraraka-san? He said with slight surprise. You did hear that I have a target the size of Mount Lady on me, right? It'll be fine, she dismissed. Besides, it's best to work with people you can get along with. True enough, he muttered. One more then. And he knew just who to bring. Momo. Izuku called out, will you join my team? Momo, who had been walking towards Todoroki, turned around to face Izuku. You still have space in your team? She questioned. That makes no sense. Izuku arched a confused brow. I have a 1,000,000-point bounty on my head. Almost everyone is staying far from me right now. That's not smart, Momo scoffed. At the very least, our classmates know how strong you are. Yeah, well. Izuku trailed off before getting back to the point. Anyway, will you join us? Momo gave him a smile. Of course I will. And so, the second round of the UA Sports Festival is about to begin. Momo shifted uncomfortably on top. I still think it'd have been better for me to be a horse, rather than be the rider, she stated. Your quirk makes you perfect for parrying people who come close by. Izuku said from the front. Uraraka-san and I both have good mobility, so it'd be pointless for either of us to be up there. And what about Hatsum-san? I don't want a Hatsum, declared immediately. I just want to show off my babies. You said that earlier too? But did you actually bring babies to throw at people or something? Izuku questioned. Hatsum stared at him for a second before pointing at the rocket shoes she and Uraraka had on. Those are my babies. Momo giggled. Did you really think she was going to use children as weapons? You never know. Izuku shrugged and Momo had to grab onto his head quickly to not go off balance. My bad, Momo. His hair is so fluffy. It's fine, she said as she readjusted herself. Look, it's about to begin. Just as she said that, Present Mike finished his countdown. Start. Immediately, the teams closest to them rushed forward. That headband is mine. We're coming for you, Midoriya. Both Tetsu's team and Hagikyure's teams were what got to Izuku's team first. Tetsu's front horse slammed his foot on the ground, and suddenly their feet started sinking. Put on your glasses, Izuku warned as he charged up energy. I'll blast us out of here right now. While the three put on sunglasses, courtesy of Momo, Izuku charged up energy in his feet before jumping up with a flash of light. Behind him, both Uraraka and Hatsum's rocket shoes ignited, and together with his own power, the team just floated in the air as Izuku deflected Jiro's attacks. Great job, leader, Hatsum said with a grin. You and Uraraka get all the credit for that, Izuku said with a matching grin. Just as you predicted, Katsuki's coming, Momo warned. Riding real high and mighty anti-Ya, Katsuki roared as he blasted himself high above them before immediately blasting towards them. Team Izuku increased the power, immediately going higher before cutting the power and going down in freefall. In those few seconds, Momo grabbed Izuku's arm and swung him like a bat towards Katsuki. With a swing of his legs carrying that momentum, Izuku unleashed a gust of wind that Katsuki was forced to block with his arms, sending the blonde back down near his team, that managed to catch him via Ciro's tape. Acting quickly, Momo, who was still holding Izuku's arms, brought her friend back to his previous position just as they landed. With a wide swing of his arms, Izuku bat away on of Shoji's extended arms. Why are you alone? Izuku wondered out loud as his team shuffled away from his classmate. Uraraka, however, was forced to stop when her boot refused to be lifted. It's one of Mineta's thingies. How'd it get here? Izuku looked back and forth from the ball and at that strangely Mineta-shaped shadow in Shoji's arms, that the guy had put in a tent shape for a reason Izuku just got. Izuku quickly sent out light flicks of wind to counter Tsuyu's tongue before Uraraka kicked off the boot and the team went into the air again. My babies! Hatsum wailed as the jetpack on Momo's back started sparking. No! My babies! Izuku quickly landed them, and Momo took the jetpack off before the sparking would get anyone hurt. Don't cry, Hatsum-san, she said quickly. It just means you can make them that much better next time. Somehow that worked. The inventor's expression did a 180, and she gave Momo a nod as she looked forward. Oh, the intense one is coming. True enough, Todoroki and his team were rushing to get in front of Izuku's team. Well then, Izuku said as he raised his right arm covered in blazing light, Momo and Uraraka-san, try to find a way to get us back into the air. Hatsum-san, please give me that double lens glove you were talking about earlier. Mei made a claw motion with her hand and gave Izuku instructions as he fiddled with it to put it on just as Todoroki's team finally reached them. It wasn't anything crazy, just a metallic glove that had 2 lenses at the center of the palm area and 1 at each fingertip. Izuku shook his hand to see how the glove felt in his hand, and smiled when he felt it fit perfectly. He decided to test it out and aimed straight up before channeling his quirk. To everyone's surprise and his absolute delight, it let out a beam of constant light. "Well then," he said as toned down the intensity by fiddling with a button Mei pointed out for him and aimed it straight at Todoroki team's front horse. "Your move." From Ida's right, a sudden black claw shot out. Without hesitation, Izuku unleashed a beam much weaker than before, but completely able to weaken Dark Shadow to the point of the quirk having to go back into Tokoyami. Todoroki sent out ice from his foot, but it was easily blown away from a swing of Izuku's other hand. "You're not gonna win with half power," Izuku said firmly. He ignored Momo and Uraraka's protests of his taunting in favor of looking at Todoroki's face, and the anger it was displaying right now. "I won't use fire in combat," Todoroki said with gritted teeth. "Then I've won," Izuku said firmly, laser glove still pointed straight at Ida. "Unless one of you has an ability they conveniently haven't used yet." Ida narrowed his eyes before saying something to Todoroki, and the whole team suddenly braced itself. "Momo," he warned to his rider, "you have it ready, right?" "Yes," she said confidently. "There's no way they'll take it." In front of them, Ida's engines roared with blue flames as he leaned forward before calling out the move's name. Recipro Burst. In a blur of speed so fast that neither Uraraka nor Mei were able to keep up with, Team Todoroki rushed at them. And then they were past them. Breathing heavily, Ida looked up to see if Todoroki had grabbed the million-point headband. What he saw did not give him hope. It was Todoroki clutching a headband that had 0000000 written on it. Not only that, his own headband was missing. The two turned together to see Yaoyorozu still wearing the real headband, secured to her head by some type of black straps that had been hidden by her hair and the fake headband. Below her stood Midoriya, with a victorious grin on his face and Team Todoroki's headband in his left hand. "Midoriya, are you All Might's secret love child or something?" "Am I what?" "Todoroki-kun, are you messing with me?" Izuku asked, too taken aback to laugh. Looking at Todoroki's expression, he could tell he wasn't. Izuku sighed and took out his wallet. "You see this photo?" he said, pointing at a family photo in the front part of the wallet. "The man with my mom and little me is my dad, Hisashi Midoriya. He was a detective, and he died saving me and a few others from a kidnapping." Todoroki stood there for a second before bowing slightly. "I apologize for any offense I may have caused." Izuku put the wallet back in his pocket with a smile. "No worries. I can see why you'd ask that since both I and All Might tend to punch things hard." Todoroki stared at him for a second before his eyes widened. "Could you show me the picture again, please?" Sure." Izuku stood there awkwardly, holding up the photo while Todoroki peered at it from like 1 centimeter of distance. "I've seen your father before at my house," he finally said. "Yeah, that makes sense. He said he's worked with Endeavor a lot, since his old station was near your dad's agency." "No, I first saw him during my brother's funeral," Todoroki clarified. "Oh, I must thank you and your father," Todoroki said with another bow. "Wow, did you learn all this bowing from Ida-kun or something? Why are you even thanking us? What do you know about quirk marriages?" "Quirk marriages? Illegal, used to make kids with strong, no way." Todoroki nodded. "Yes, I as well as my siblings are all products of a quirk marriage." "Wait, but, like I said, they're illegal, right?" "They are. Do you really think that matters when the one doing it is the number 2 hero?" "Holy crap. It was hell for the first few years," Todoroki said, "until my brother Tuya died. After that, my father got worse. And then he got better." "Better?" "Yes. I'm not sure about the details since I was young, but your father would come to my house and talk with my father about things. A month after my brother's death, He sat the three of us down and apologized to us, and asked us what we want for the first time. Todoroki, for the first time, had a small smile on his face now. Your father is the reason I can call Endeavor father now without wanting to punch the wall. So, thank you. Izuku waved his hand dismissively. Not being able to watch others suffer is definitely something I got from my old man, he said with a grin. I'm sure he'd be happy to see your growth, Todoroki-kun. Todoroki nodded and started to walk away. Wait. He turned around, brow arched. Yes. Why won't you use your fire? Todoroki stared at him for a second before sighing and walking back to their little alley space. I promised to never use it in combat. To who? Myself. Why? At first it was out of resentment to Endeavor, he said with a faraway look. The first time I used it after forgiving him, I hurt my brother and sister because I couldn't control it at all. I haven't used it since out of fear. Wait, but if your control was bad then, wouldn't it have grown stronger by now? Yes. Todoroki nodded. That is true. That is why I don't want to use it. I don't want to hurt people the way he used to. Forgive me if this sounds rude, especially after you've laid your life out like this to me, but I think that's stupid. Excuse me? I understand being afraid of hurting your family or bystanders near you, but this is a hero school, and in 3 years we're going to be facing villains every day. You can't afford to hold back for this kind of a reason. Look at All Might, he could massacre everyone in the stands right now if he lands too hard. Does that stop him from being a hero? Todoroki's affronted expression changed into one of thoughtfulness before a wry smile took its place. You can't help but try to help people, can you? What can I say? It runs in the family. You've given me a lot to think about, Todoroki said finally. I'm not going to break that promise, but you're welcome to make me change that. First match of the third round. Mineta Minoru versus Hiroshi Shinso. Begin. Yo! Shinso called out as Mineta started sweating in front of him. You remember me? Mineta was able to squeak out a why yes before going completely still. Now that we have you ready, the taller teen said, pacing back and forth in front of Mineta. What should I do? Spill secrets? Nah, from what Idiot 1 and Idiot 2 told me, you're a perv, so I'd rather not know. Make you hit yourself? Nah, that's not heroic, is it? Ah, he said with a glint in his eyes, I have it. Mineta, how did you get into the hero course? I asked my mother, the short pervert said emotionlessly. And how did your mother get you in? My mother is on the board of directors, so she slid out the person in the 19th slot for 1A and put me in. And do you know who that seat belongs to? Mineta struggled a bit, and Shinso glared at him and reapplied his quirk. Answer me. Why you? Yes, now walk out of the ring while doing ballet spins. Hitoshi Shinso wins. What the hell did that kid even do? Shinso turned to look at the commentary booth to see why Aizawa suddenly muted both their mics and see them talk about something before making a call while glancing at a short lady in the stands who bore a striking resemblance to the still spinning ballerina of UA High. He smirked. The ring was big enough for most people to not know what they were saying, but any capable underground hero surely would be able to read their lips to understand what they said. And that's what he'd been counting on. Yeesh, Izuku said with a shudder as he saw Todoroki melt his glacier. I thought we parted on good terms. While we wait for the glacier to melt, will Class 1A's Izuku Midoriya and 1B's Nito Minoma make way to the stage, please? Wait, Midoriya. Izuku turned to see the blonde guy from 1B make way to Izuku. Before we start the match, I wanted to apologize. Izuku quirked a brow. For what? The incident in the hallways. I shouldn't have provoked you like that. Oh, it's all good. Izuku was going to walk off at that, but he saw the guy extend his hand with an expectant look. Not wanting to be a jerk, he shook hands with Minoma before going down. Second match. Izuku Midoriya versus Nito Minoma. Begin. For 1B, Minoma shouted before. Lighting up? Wait, is that my dash? Izuku wasn't able to finish his sentence, being forced to dodge a dash from Minoma. You idiot! Monoma said, grinning like a maniac. I copied your quirk when I shook hands for you. Also, I take back the apology. Izuku shook his head with a smirk of his own. You think you've won? You haven't even touched me yet. With a snarl, Monoma charged forward into a blur of light that would have slammed into Izuku. If Izuku was a tree, Izuku had to admit he'd taken his ability to change directions as granted till he saw Ida's quirk and its drawbacks, and definitely appreciated it more now that he could see Monoma dashing around like a mad bull, only able to start and stop but not turn. It was only good sportsmanship that kept Izuku from saying "oh" every time he dodged. All right, I'm done, he said finally before focusing 30% of one for all into his arm along with Haki. I don't even need to go into flow to deal with you. Bug sweat smash. He hit the charging mass of light, Monoma, just as it got to him, and slapped him to the side so hard that he cracked the stadium wall with the impact. Izuku Midoriya wins. You overdid it, Midoriya. Midnight reprimanded him. He's the one who copied my quirk, Izuku protested. That should be like a paper cut worth of actual hurt. The robots scraping him off confirmed the diagnosis of him not being actually hurt, and everything was resolved. As he entered the tunnel, he looked forward to see All Might in his skeleton form. Bug sweat smash? His mentor questioned in a dry way. It seemed accurate, Izuku said with a shrug. Mina Ashido wins by knockout. Tenya Ida wins due to ring out. Did I just watch a commercial? Momo Yaoyorozu snatches victory from the jaws of defeat. My eyes are still burning after that flash bang though. Did these two seriously knock each other out? We'll do a tiebreaker later. Uraraka is unable to move. Katsuki Bakugo wins. Time for the quarter-finals of the third round. First match, the quiet champion of his previous match. Class 1C's Hitoshi Shinso. Hitoshi walked into the ring among cheers from the cheers of the Gen Ed class. Versus the guy who made an iceberg in 5 seconds. Class 1A's Shoto Todoroki. Begin. Hitoshi jumped to the side, dodging the ice before it was even made before charging forward. Izuku grinned from the stands, understanding the strategy. An all-or-nothing gamble? Beside him, Momo questioned. Yep. Down in the ring, Hitoshi ran past Todoroki after rolling past another ice barrage before sliding under another block that appeared at head level. Now at the dual-haired teen's left side, he threw out a kick at his chest. A kick that was caught in Todoroki's right hand, and then frozen. He twisted his body, slamming his hand down onto Todoroki's head. The hit landed, and Todoroki stumbled back before regaining his footing and completely freezing Shinso. Shoto Todoroki goes to the semi-finals. Honestly, I don't think Shinso even tried to use his quirk there. Because he knew Todoroki wouldn't respond after seeing how it would work, Aizawa-sensei said. Still, not even attempting to use it wasn't a good decision. Well then, time for the Acid Queen of 1A to go against her class's very own One-Punch Man. Izuku Midoriya versus Mina Ashido. Begin. Mina-san, Izuku called out. Are you sure you want to do this? Mina would have been offended, but seeing the grin on his face let her know he was just trash-talking. Why? You afraid I'll melt your clothes off? You can try. With that, Izuku vanished from her sight, and she turned around with her hand up to spray him with acid. But he wasn't there. She looked back to where he had been to see he wasn't there either. Above you. She whipped her head up to see Izuku falling down with a shit-eating grin and a punch ready. She questioned if he had been the one to warn her. And then she fell unconscious. It was honestly a good match, Izuku consoled Momo, who had just lost her match against Ida. She had used a good strategy, scattering caltrops wherever she could and using her staff to keep him at a distance. They weren't nearly heavy enough though, and Ida was able to blow them out of his way with the wind his kicks generated at the second gear. One recipro burst after that, and Momo had been gently escorted out the ring. I know, it's just frustrating, his friend said, as she looked at Tetsu and Katsuki's match half-heartedly. You did great against Tokoyami, though, Izuku reminded her. You figured out his weakness. That was with your aid. Momo said miserably, "If I hadn't seen your quirks in combat during the second round, I probably would have lost there as well." "That's not the point," Izuku said as he saw her muffle the sound of a sniffle behind her hand. "And you don't have to hide it if you're upset by a loss. Especially not from me." She nodded and removed her hand from her face. "Thank you." Izuku sighed and grabbed her hand. "Hearing me ramble probably doesn't help, does it?" He leaned back into his chair and looked at the stage to see Katsuki end the match by flipping over Tetsu using his explosions and launching him out of the ring and into the wall. That concludes the quarter-finals. Let's keep this momentum going and start the semi-finals round. For the first match, will Izuku Midoriya and Shoto Todoroki come down to the stage, please? Izuku sighed and stood up. "I'm up." Momo nodded. "Do your best." Izuku gave her a wry grin before turning and jumping off the stands with a burst of light. He went up slowly for a second, before falling to the ground like a comet. In front of him was Todoroki, walking out of the tunnel with a raised eyebrow. That was quite an entrance. "This is going to be quite the fight after all," Izuku said as he cracked his knuckles and drew his arm back, already ready to fire off an attack. "Izuku Midoriya versus Shoto Todoroki. Begin." In an instant, Todoroki sent out a glacier as big as the one he used earlier to cover Izuku. The ice lasted for about 10 seconds. Then it shattered completely. Flow state, 20%. Izuku felt one for all flow through his body at 20%, pushing Glint past its natural limit. The fist he had cocked back earlier had already been thrown forward, punching through the second ice barrage and sending Todoroki skidding by a bit. "You didn't really think you could take me down like that, did you?" Izuku asked as he looked at Todoroki. "No, I didn't," Todoroki said as he raised his right hand and aimed straight up. "You should be honored, Midoriya," Todoroki said as ice crystals swirled around his raised arm. "I had to create a new move just to use against you." He made a fist and punched the ground. Frozen Blossom. Ice erupted around the spot Todoroki had planted his fist. Izuku charged one for all at 35% into his right hand, and swiped the air with an open palm to release a gust of wind. The wind blew away the shards in front of him, but he could only watch as the ice took the shape of a giant sakura blossom made of ice, with Todoroki in the center. "This is the defense I need to keep up with you," Todoroki said, hand still planted firmly in the ground. Todoroki can't control his ice after he loses contact with it, Izuku thought as he channeled Haki into his senses to predict the next move. That means he's still going to pull some trick. Below. Izuku jumped up high, jumping from one ice pillar to another until he was standing at the side of one, hand glowing as it held on to the tallest pillar of ice. An AoE, area of effect. Attack, Izuku muttered as he charged up Haki into his legs before jumping into the air. Two can play at that game. He felt gravity take hold and started spinning as he put both his legs together, Haki coating his entire body below his waist. The crowd could only cheer as they saw a literal star fall down in a storm of black lightning. Falling Comet. The formation Todoroki had created caved with almost no resistance. The dual-haired teen had to abandon all defense and thrust his right arm back as he created layers upon layers of ice to cancel the force with which he had been flung back. Izuku had landed in a crouch, black lightning still rolling off of him as he looked up at Todoroki and smirked. Todoroki gritted his teeth in fury as he saw the move he had spent weeks cultivating be rendered useless the moment it made contact with his opponent. He hadn't even gotten to actually display the defense part of it, Izuku taking it down before he could truly show it off. "You won't beat me if you're only going to use half your power." "It's not that simple," Todoroki snarled. "You've seen what just my ice can do. Do you really want to add Endeavor's flames to that?" "Won't know till you try." Izuku aimed at Todoroki and clapped his hands, releasing a shockwave that destroyed the ice that had been behind Todoroki. "Don't you remember what Sensei said?" Izuku called out, "No good hero is a one-trick pony. Your trick might be strong, but against people like me or Katsuki, it won't do much." "I can make more moves," Todoroki argued, My frozen blossom move earlier just didn't get to shine because you're a maniac. That's my whole point here, Izuku muttered before charging forward and grabbing Todoroki by the sleeve and dangled him over the edge of the arena. Blast me away right now. I won't. Todoroki tried putting out ice from his hand, but Izuku grabbed his right arm with a hockey-infused arm and held it up. Why won't my ice come out? Todoroki groaned. Because you lack resolve, Izuku said, leaning forward. My power is overwhelming you right now because my resolve isn't flickering. Todoroki winced as Izuku squeezed his right arm. I don't understand. You need to get out of your head, Izuku said. Stop thinking so much. Stop listening to your brain and start listening to your heart. What is it saying right now? I want to win, Todoroki said. I want to be a hero. Then become a hero, Izuku yelled at him. Be the hero you know you could be if you just removed your restraints. I won't hurt people with those flames, Todoroki said through gritted teeth. Oh, for God's sake, Izuku groaned. It's your quirk. Train it to not hurt people. We've already talked about this. With an annoyed grunt, Izuku threw Todoroki towards the center of the arena. I promise you, I won't go down just because you light up a bit, Izuku said, crouching down to meet the down teen. Just try once. This is UA. They'll stop you if you go out of control, Izuku promised. Just once. Stop thinking and just do. Todoroki didn't say anything, and Izuku thought that he might have knocked his opponent out for a second. And then he used it. A blast of flames shot into the sky. He saw Todoroki sit up and shake his head. You're crazy for this, you know? Todoroki had a grin matching Izuku's on his face. That's what I'm talking about, Izuku exclaimed as he dashed forward. 20% smash. Todoroki rolled to the side, releasing a torrent of flames at Izuku. Izuku jumped back with a blast of energy before swiping at the air with haki overflowing from his arms. Todoroki had to create his own blast of flames to stop himself from being thrown out. It's great that you're using your flames and all, but nothing's changed, Izuku informed him. This match is still mine to win. We'll see about that. Todoroki tensed, flames and ice both rushing out of him like water from a dam. In front of him stood Izuku, no black lightning or white light in sight. I'm ending this, Todoroki said before unleashing his move. Flash freeze heat wave. Izuku took in a deep breath and threw his fist out. 100% Detroit smash. Neither noticed the wall Cemento Sensei suddenly put between them, or the pink mist from Midnight Sensei's quirk that was blown away from the blast. Wait! Izuku turned to see a young man with white hair and a hero suit rushing towards him. Is that Frozone? Sorry to disturb you when you're supposed to be going to the infirmary, but I had to say this. The man then bowed. Thank you for helping my brother. Izuku frantically pulled him up with a panicked squeak. Is bowing something rich people just like doing? He wondered as Frozone, or as he introduced himself, Natsuo Todoroki started speaking. Shoto's always been an overthinker, and right after he got past the stupid promise he made to never use his flames, he almost hurt Fuyumi, our sister. Me and the old man made sure no one got hurt, and Fuyumi was totally chill about it, but he had an existential crisis or something. Anyway, enough rambling, he said as he slapped his cheeks. Point is, you basically saved him from himself. Words cannot explain how grateful our whole family is. Dad and Mom went down to talk to him, otherwise they'd be here too. I'm glad I could help, Izuku said with a smile. All right, I'm gonna go find them. Congrats on your victory, and good luck for the finals. Us pros technically shouldn't take sides, but I'm rooting for you. What a refreshing guy, Izuku thought to himself as he continued walking down the corridor. How come Todoroki-kun and Endeavor aren't that chill? You idiot. Out of consideration for Recovery Girl, Izuku didn't phase through the beating she was giving him right now from her syringe walking stick thing. It really wasn't as bad as it looked, Izuku weakly protested. I've told you before, just because your body isn't like a normal human's doesn't mean you can keep blasting off body parts. But they grow back. Not the point here. What an explosive finish. Bakugo defeats Ida by knockout. Bakugo moves on to fight Midoriya in the finals. There's another boy who can't hold back. Recovery Girl muttered darkly as she moved to prepare a bed for Ida's checkup. Did you both grow up not learning what limits are? Our teachers were pretty adamant on us breaking those, Izuku said with a small smile as he remembered his martial arts classes with Kakin at Mori-sensei's dojo. What's with that smile? Before she could say anything, the doors opened to see Ida walk in robotically. Recovery Girl, forgive my impudence, but I ask you to please heal my left leg as I am unable to properly walk on it currently. With a perfect 90-degree bow. I think I've seen more bowing today than I had in like the past 3 years. For some reason, she didn't scold or hit Ida with her cane, which Izuku personally found to be a sign of discrimination. A minute later, Katsuki walked in. Old lady, Aizawa-sensei said I had to get a slip from you to say that I'm good to fight. One thing at a time. I'll handle Ida's leg first, then I'll give both of you your slips. While she moved to do as she had just said, Katsuki turned to face Izuku. We've got the green light for it. While Ida and Recovery Girl glanced at them with slight confusion, Izuku's eyes widened. Really? They didn't say something like preferential treatment. It's only 'cause both of us are in the finals, and got those acknowledgement stamps from the HPSC 2 years ago. Izuku nodded. How much time do we have to prepare then? Half-hour break, according to Yamada-sensei. Ah, I'll have to run to our class to get my suit then. I grabbed mine, so you're already behind. Do you seriously have to make everything a competition? Yes. It's time for the final match of the first year's sports festival, the explosive boy with the greatest firepower in the first year, against the untouchable god of speed. But wait, what's this? Both Izuku and Katsuki walked out onto the field amidst a rain of applause and cheers, standing on top of the ring and facing each other. As I'm sure everyone has already noticed, these two are in their hero suits. This is because of a request made by both of them that the principal has decided to approve. And so not only is this the finals of the sports festival, it's also an exhibition match to display the strength of Japan's future. With Aizawa-sensei's clarification done, Midnight Sensei walked up. No ring outs, victory only by knockout or surrender. Me and Cementos will be moving away immediately after the match starts, but we will stop anything too extreme, so keep it moderate. Both Izuku and Katsuki nodded, completely ignoring the last part. Well then, begin. Izuku took a step forward, bringing up his katana as Katsuki brought his staff behind his back. Do you want to start small and move up, or go crazy from the start? Katsuki pondered for a second, before grinning. I say we make a show of it. Izuku smiled, and then jumped back. All right. He raised his sword up, the tip pointing as the sky as he entered his flow state at 20%. Solar flare. He released an arc of glowing white light that Katsuki jumped to the side to dodge. I was there when you came up with that, Katsuki said as he thrust the staff towards Izuku, launching sweat from the pump system that he detonated for a directed explosion. Exploding thrusts. He repeated the action, sending out explosions while thrusting the staff like he was playing billiards. You have no idea how dumb that looks, Izuku said, as he leapt out of the ring and landed sideways on the walls of the arena before running around at 35% to create a smokescreen. Landmine blast. He cleared the smoke in an instant before jumping up and aiming with his staff as he cocked his arm back for a throw. That's a staff, not a spear. You can't holy sh. Somehow, Katsuki had caught on to where Izuku would be, and threw the staff with a cluster of explosions fast enough to catch up to the green-haired boy. This would have meant nothing since Izuku could just phase through objects. If Katsuki hadn't tied a bunch of mini grenades to the tip. Even if Izuku had seen it through hockey, he wasn't able to turn or stop the incoming blast. So all he could do was coat his arms with armament hockey and bring it up to block the explosion. Still hurt. He coughed as he landed, skidding on the ground a bit before stopping and getting up to see Katsuki grab his staff. You've gotten cocky, haven't you? It wasn't an accusation, but an observation. He was uncharacteristically calm, idly spinning his staff in his hands as he walked towards Izuku. I know that you were able to see the mini-bombs I had set inside this thing, but you chose to tank it instead of dodging. He pointed an accusatory finger at Izuku. Stop messing around. I'm not copycat, or raccoon eyes, or half and half. This is a fight against a guy who knows most of your moves, so either get stronger on the spot or get out of the way. Izuku blinked as he realized his earlier mistake. Calm? There was no way that look in Katsuki's eyes could be anything but anger. Anger so intense it had long passed the explosive stage. Izuku chuckled as he picked his katana back up and swung it a few times idly before flipping it, holding it in reverse grip behind his head as he got into a stance. You're right. Let's do this. Divine departure. Izuku swung with a roar, releasing a slash of haki so potent it gouged the earth as it made way to Katsuki. Undeterred, the explosive boy jumped to the side, using the wall as a springboard to jump towards Izuku in a rush of explosions. Izuku punched the ground, releasing a force that sent him flying into the air for a bit. 30 would have been my max for long-term use before my body starts breaking, but he's right. He closed his eyes for a second, concentrating to feel the endless source of energy called One for All. If I don't evolve right here, I'll never be able to be a real hero. Flow state, 40%. He landed with a grunt, creating a second tiny crater as he tensed his body. It's a complete different level of strain compared to when I went from 20 to 30, he thought to himself. Overflow breaks my body so fast I can't even feel it, but I can feel the pressure on my body right now. Where are you looking? He gasped, realizing he'd been focusing on the wrong thing as he jumped back, accidentally crashing into the walls of the arena. Well, at least I can still move. Exploding thrusts. Solar thrusts. Izuku matched Katsuki's rush of explosions, using haki to throw his own beams of light at the exact spots where Katsuki's explosions were. He dashed forward, closing the distance before bringing his sword down for an explosive solar flare. With a roar, Katsuki swung his staff up too, releasing a blast from the tip that hit the solar flare point blank. The impact caused a shockwave that sent both Izuku and Katsuki back, and their weapons flying. Light arrow. Without a moment's rest, Izuku dashed forward, legs pointed as his opponent as he sent himself flying in a cocoon of light. Explosive speed. Katsuki threw his arms back before dashing forward to meet Izuku's charge. He changed angles completely halfway, pointing his arms up to change his trajectory, moving under Izuku's kick and skidding on the ground for a few seconds before turning back around. Explosion wheel. He jumped into a front flip before releasing explosions into the shape of a fiery wheel that crashed into Izuku's side. Full body flare. Izuku released a blast of light from his whole body, freeing him and giving him the chance to create some distance. He groaned in pain as he felt his body strain under the pressure from both inside and outside his body and reluctantly lowered flow to 30%. Raise the percentage at the moment of impact. He remembered what Yagi-sensei and Torino-sensei had told him during those hellish days of training. It had been when he could barely handle the strain 20% brought him, so his mentors had told him to spike from 8 to 20 for the moment when he had to send out flicks of air pressure. Surely the same principle would apply here. He brought his hand up, aiming straight at the approaching Katsuki. Maintain it, and then spike it, now. He released a blast of wind energy that hit his opponent straight at the chest, causing Katsuki's eyes to widen at the almost instant attack that had hit him. St. Louis smash. Again, he maintained 35% throughout his body before spiking it for the second of impact to 45% as he struck Katsuki's right side, the blonde barely able to bring his arms up to absorb most of the impact before being sent back like a ragdoll. Any thoughts of maintaining control evaporated as Izuku heard a distinct click sound. Katsuki froze too, and both of them turned to look at his grenade-shaped gauntlets at the same time. Hey, I'm allowed to use these, right? The question wasn't directed to Izuku, but to the teachers. We wouldn't have given them to you if you weren't. Make sure not to hurt the audience. Katsuki turned to face Izuku with a grin as he brought up his arm and aimed straight at him. You heard that right? Yeah. And you know what I'm about to do? Yeah. You ready? No. Surrender then. Never. Good. And then he pulled the pin. Somehow, it was simpler to dodge compared to when he had fought Katsuki in the combat training. Maybe because that was a narrow corridor that lowered Izuku's options, or maybe it was because Izuku now had haki that let him see the paths to safety, but it was relatively simple to dash back before using flash arrow long version to literally the other side of the arena. Good decision too, because while he had dodged it easily, the ground hadn't. And it showed. Don't be resting easy yet. Katsuki growled as he walked up to where both of their weapons had landed. I've got a lot more in me, and you're practically dead on your feet. He's right, Izuku realized. He's got one more charge, and I can't go for a big dash like the one I just did again with the strain using 40% through my whole body did. He frowned as he saw Katsuki take off the gauntlet with the explosive charge ready and fiddle with the staff. The hell are you doing? Preparing my secret weapon. He brandished the staff, now with the grenade-shaped gauntlet attached to its tip. That's really impractical, you know that, right? Shut up, Katsuki snapped. I don't need to care about things like aerodynamics or gravity if I have enough explosions. As if to prove his point, he jumped up, miniature blasts sprouting from his left hand as he aimed with his right, reminiscent of the start of the fight when he had hit Izuku with that spear-throwing move. He sighed and got into a stance, right arm cocked back and left in an angle to be able to swipe the air. I'm gonna have to deal with another scolding, but I'm not gonna let myself go down either. He moved his left arm to be diagonal to his body, in the same pose as those old pre-quirk videos of martial artists breaking through stacks of bricks using chops. Just for the next minute, overflow. Izuku channeled one for all at 100% through his arms and his back leg while maintaining the 30% through the rest of his body. It was a testament to how focused he was right now, that he was able to bring out haki onto his left hand at its full force after that. Let's finish this, his explosive opponent yelled as he finished bouncing around in the air at the same spot, now in a spiral of smoke while still holding the staff gauntlet thing in his right arm. Yeah. Izuku knew Katsuki. He knew that while his friend was great at analyzing, being able to break down opponents in his head at a pace that matched Izuku. But he also knew that Katsuki's solutions to problems that couldn't easily be blasted tended to be bigger or more explosions. So, when he saw him throw the weapon at a speed incomparable to the previous throw, he didn't hesitate to swipe his haki-covered 100% left arm forward to release a storm of wind pressure. California smash. Final blast. The explosions weren't deterred by a bit, only deflected to miss Izuku by about 2 meters and be embedded into an array of wall cementos made to protect the entrance hallway. But Izuku knew it wasn't enough. Katsuki wasn't the type to let a weapon finish something, and it was proven when he saw the blonde launch himself forward with the smoke from before swirling. So, he released the energy he had in his right leg, launching himself forward to meet Katsuki's attack point blank with his right fist. Howitzer impact. 100% Detroit smash. It's time to confer the medals, and the one who will present the medals is of course Dash. I am here to distribute the medals. Our hero All Might. A moment of awkward silence. Then, sorry, I talked over you, Midnight Sensei apologized as he stared at her. Anyway, let's begin the ceremony. Ida Shonen was unable to join us due to personal circumstances, so we will start off with the other person at third place. Izuku had to hide a wince as he heard All Might's booming voice from practically right in front of him. He should have been used to it by now, what with the fact that they'd met up every day for almost a year, but maybe all the blasts from his earlier 2 battles had taken a toll on his hearing. Todoroki, my boy, congratulations. I'm sure you had your reasons for suppressing your fireside, right? Izuku couldn't hear Todoroki's words from where he was, but didn't pry as he saw All Might hug the boy and give him some words of encouragement or something. Now then, Bakugo Shonen, I must admit, I am surprised to see you this calm. I gave my 100%. If I lost after that, it just means there's more shit I have to work on. He said the words, but his expression said the opposite. Right? Well, that is a great attitude to have, Bakugo Shonen. Take this medal now, and grab the gold next year. Katsuki didn't resist All Might putting the medal or the hug. His face when he glanced at the silver medal wasn't exactly reassuring though. And now, for the victor of today's event, Midoriya Shonen. You truly went beyond today, didn't you? I did what I was asked to do, Izuku said with a smirk. At All Might's quirked eyebrow, Izuku leaned in and whispered to his mentor. I showed the world that I was here, just like you said. His mentor's eyes widened before a booming laughter escaped him. That you did, my boy. Truly. Exceptional work today. With that, he put on Izuku's gold medal and gave him a hug before turning around with a flourish. And there you have it. This year it's these three. However, heed these words, folks. There was a possibility for any of you in the arena to stand here. Just as you saw with your own eyes, they compete with each other and go to greater heights. And to that sentiment I'll add one final thing. Everybody say it with me now. Plus Ultra. Thank you for all your hard work today. All Might. That was obviously the time to say plus Ultra. But everyone worked so hard today. Hey, isn't that Izuku Midoriya? For real, where? That hair. It really is him. Izuku was not prepared for this. He got on the train like normal and checked his messages on the phone like normal. And then people randomly swarmed him, showering him with compliments, both about his quirk and his fights. You were so cool, man. You're shorter than I thought you would be. He did have to remind himself that cutting up a train to run to school would be unheroic a couple of times. What are you doing walking so leisurely? Izuku jumped a little as he saw Ida sprint past him in boots and a raincoat. We've still got 5 minutes. Izuku called out behind his friend as he started sprinting behind him. The baseline for those in UA should be 10 minutes early, Ida declared, matching his pace with Izuku to run beside him. If you're worried about my brother, you don't need to be, Ida said as he took of the raincoat's hood. The one I'm worried about is you, Izuku said, closing his umbrella. I know very well that seeing someone you admired so much in that kind of a state hurts more than you can put into words. He pat Ida on the shoulder before moving past. No matter what, know that me and the guys from 1A have your back. He wished he had turned back, because the expression on his friend's face wasn't one that a hero should have. You'll be coming up with your hero names today. Hell yeah. This is related to the internships I mentioned the other day. Aizawa-sensei continued like no one had said anything. The work you'll be doing is an expression of interest in your future professional. It's not rare that interests dry up by graduation, so make sure to show off what you can do. Now then, the tally of nominations is as follows. Todoroki minus 4,123. Midoriya 3, 876. Bakugo 3, 556. Yaoyorozu 498. Ida 306. Tokoyami 301. Kirishima 68. Uraraka 28. 016. Normally it'd have been more balanced, but this year the attention leaned heavily towards 3 of you. Hey, how come Todoroki has more than Midoriya? Isn't the order reversed? A lot of those must be because of my dad, Todoroki said. Regardless of whether you got nominated, you'll be getting experience, so don't worry about that. For that, you'll be picking out code names. You can choose temporary names, but you should be careful, because if you pick something strange then, there'll be hell to pay later. The class turned together to see Midnight Sensei walk in. The names you come up with today might end up being the name the world will know you as, so I'm here to make sure no one ends up with something weird. Izuku clapped with the rest of his classmates as Kirishima sat down after showing off Red Riot as his name. Midoriya, have you finished yours yet? Izuku blinked at Sensei's question, before standing up to show off his name to his friends. The Light Hero Beacon. I came up with the name when I was younger, so this was easy. Good. Simple name. And a great tagline. All right, Next is Bakugu, the explosion god, dynamite. Well, dynamite is good, but maybe use explosion hero instead of explosion god? God is just a big word to use, you know. Midnight Sensei gave her feedback. What about king then? Katsuki said with a scowl as he changed his board. Sure, sounds good. Eventually, Todoroki stepped up to show his. My brother suggested this. The temperature hero, frozen fire. Todoroki, can you actually freeze fire? Midnight questioned. No, I cannot. Then I don't think that'll work. That name might be a bit misleading, you know. Understood. Todoroki bowed, before moving to the side for Ida to show his name. I'll just use Tenya. For now, Ida said in a low voice as he glanced at his own board, like he wasn't sure about it. Midoriya. Izuku jumped a bit in his seat and turned to see Todoroki standing beside him. The name I had picked out wasn't accepted, and I can't think of using anything but my given name, so I came to ask for help. Momo, who had been talking about something with Jiro, paused as her friend suddenly looked at Midoriya. Todoroki is asking Midoriya and Bakugu for hero name suggestions. Jiro-san, eavesdropping on others is not all right. Yeah, all right, her friend shrugged it off. Now that we know though, why not join in and help the poor guy out before they name him something stupid? Ignoring Momo's disapproving gaze, Jiro moved to stand on the other side of Izuku's table. Just use icy hot. Katsuki argued with Izuku as the trio of 1A's strongest tried to find a good hero name for Todoroki. It has both his powers and it's short. Yeah, but you use it as an insult every time, Izuku pointed out. Using an insult for a hero name is just dumb. You're dumb. And you've got the brain of a child. We are all children, Todoroki commented quietly. Katsuki, who had been about to fire out another insult to Izuku, faltered at that. You should change your name into the dense hero. Todoroki frowned in confusion. My quirk has no relation to density. It was a joke, Todoroki. The trio looked up to see Momo and Jiro take a step towards them. How about Frostfire Man? Jiro suggested. I think the man makes it sound dumb, Katsuki said with a snort. Still better than Icy Hot. What did you say, ears? Your hero name is just your quirk's name, so don't get too cocky. While Jiro and Katsuki continued bickering, Momo joined Izuku and Todoroki's pondering. The temperature hero, Crimson Frost. Great name. I am here, in a strange pose. 1A was so used to this by now that they just glanced at the door for a second before returning to their conversations. Izuku, who had been about to open the door, looked down at his mentor with mild amusement. What's up, All Might Sensei? Come out here for a second. I want to talk to you about one of your offers. All Might's shuddering immediately let Izuku know what was coming. No way. I'm not going to him. All Might nodded sympathetically. I understand your pain, but I don't think anyone else knows as much about One for All as Gran Torino. No, there is. All Might blinked. Izuku pointed straight at his mentor. You're here. His mentor looked at him for a second with an unreadable expression, before gently shaking his head. I understand that you want to train more with me as my successor, but I'm afraid we can't do that. My time in my muscle form is all being used up in my day-to-day classes, so I wouldn't be able to really train you anyway. Izuku nodded before bringing up his own points. Big or small, you're still All Might. What I'm after isn't someone who punches like me. I need someone who can teach me about being the number one. There's only one of those, Sensei. His mentor looked at him quietly, searching for something. He must have found what he was looking for, because he sighed and nodded. I'll call Torino Sensei for handling the practical portion. You must understand, though, Thaddeus won't get much benefit from juggling two teachers, especially when one of them is as intense as him. Izuku nodded. That's what I'm gonna need. The sports festival showed me that I've got too arrogant. All Might nodded. Your battle against Bakugo Shonen, eh? So you think getting beat up for a week will help you lose that? Izuku chuckled. It's not like I just want to get hit, sensei. If I just wanted people stronger than me, I could have gone to Endeavor or Edgeshot since they both send invites as well. I came to you because I'm your successor. Welcome to Might Tower, kid. Izuku walked beside Gran Torino and Yagi-sensei in his muscle form into All Might's agency. For the rest of the week, you won't get to see this area, so be sure to soak it all in. Why won't I get to see this? I'm gonna go on patrol with Torino-sensei, so wouldn't I leave from here? There is an opening at the top that I always use to go places, Yagi-sensei said with booming laughter. You'll see that it is much more effective to always be in motion when you're a hero. Now, I've already added your details into the tower system, so you should be able to go anywhere in here. I'll be back at the end of the day. With that, the man walked back out of the double doors and flew off back to UA. All right, go suit up, Torino-sensei said after 10 seconds of looking around. Meet me at the top floor. It's time for your first patrol. Flash arrow. Izuku quickly took down the burglar, pinning the man's magma arm down with a hockey-covered arm. Good job, kid. Efficient and quick to respond. Only thing I'll comment on is that you could afford to hold back a bit more. Pavements are quick to repair, but heroes need to avoid property damage. Izuku nodded, seeing the crack in the ground where he had pinned the burglar down. Now, what do we do after catching a criminal? Gran Torino quizzed him. Inform the police? Exactly. Heroes have a hotline to the police, specifically to just come and grab dirtbags like this one. I already contacted them this time, so don't worry about that. You should install a button to call them like how most heroes do in their costumes. Izuku looked at his mentor's costume. I don't see anything like that on your suit though, sensei. I barely do hero work anymore, so I stick to using my phone. Heroes like Endeavor or Best Jeanist have teams around them, or in their ears, so their sidekicks usually make the calls for them. All Might just usually picks the criminals up and goes to the police himself. Izuku nodded, writing things down in the mini notebook he had brought for spontaneous lessons like this. Where did you get that? The notebook? There was a sale going on near my home, so I bought like 5. That's not what I meant. The criminal, who had been presumed to be unconscious, tried to wiggle out of Izuku's grip while this conversation happened. There was literally no way for him to escape Izuku's hockey-enhanced grip though, and Izuku and Torino-sensei just continued the conversation, chatting about how the crime rate of Roppongi had slightly gone up because of All Might spending so much time at UA. In a burst of light, Izuku landed at the roof of Might Tower along with Torino-sensei. Good work today, kid, Sensei said as the two took the nearby stairs to get inside the actual building. You're a sponge, you know? You're absorbing this stuff pretty quickly. We were taught about basic protocol at school, so I was really just filling in some blanks today. All right then, you're free for the rest of the day. Go run around and see the tower. I can see you itching to do that. Make sure you stay in costume until you get to your room though. There's a lot of people who work here, so they'll get confused if they see a random kid in pajamas running around. Izuku munched on a packet of chips, courtesy of the vending machines near the bathrooms, as he walked through the building, responding to greetings cheerfully as he explored the huge building. It was interesting to see all the different kinds of offices that were in here. One that dealt with legal stuff, one that dealt with the merch business, a few for just charities. It really put into perspective how much stuff All Might was actually involved in. He froze as he felt his phone go off, and quickly dusted off his hands to pick up the call. Kid, time for your first emergency situation. The tracks of one of the trains got done in, and the train's not slowing down. I'm sending the location to you now. Come to the flight zone within 2 minutes, and wait for me. Izuku gave the affirmative to his teacher, chucking the half-eaten packet of chips into a nearby dustbin before literally flying upstairs till he was at the top. Torino-sensei wasn't here yet, so he quickly checked where the collapse had happened, confirming that it was northwest, exactly 27 kilometers away. He waited for 3 more minutes, bouncing impatiently on the balls of his feet, before deciding that he'd rather just take the scolding than let people get hurt. Flash arrow, long version. He launched himself, running on the side of buildings every few seconds to recharge before using his super move again to get to the site of crisis. What he was met with wasn't what he was expecting. He saw Gran Torino, sitting at a nearby rooftop, holding a timer. He also saw 0 damage to the train tracks. Izuku landed beside his teacher, now realizing this had been some kind of a test. 6 minutes after I called you, Torino-sensei said, way too slow. 3 of those were me waiting for you, Izuku said, annoyed. That doesn't make it better, sensei reprimanded. While most of your classmates should wait for their mentors before leaving, you and that Bakugo kid got authority from the HPSC to use your quirks for a reason. Next time, it might not be a drill. Don't hesitate when that happens. Izuku nodded, slightly ashamed. Torino-sensei started to walk towards the edge of the rooftop, ready to fly back to Might Tower, when they both heard a woman's shriek. Before the old man could even say something, Izuku was gone in a flash. Unseen by Izuku, the old man smirked. You really do learn quickly, kid. 20% Detroit smash. Izuku took down one of the thugs with one punch, before using his legs to sweep another off his feet. A third guy, presumably a lookout from where he had been standing, could only let out a yell of confusion before being knocked out by another Detroit smash. The guy who'd been sent to the ground was next, and Izuku kicked him away from the almost victim. A young woman who was clutching her handbag to her chest and had tears streaming down her face. The woman and Izuku just stared at each other for a second, before the woman rushed forward and hugged him. Thank you, she wailed. Thank you so much. If it weren't for you, I'd have, oh God. While she collapsed in his arms, Izuku awkwardly stared at his teacher, wordlessly asking what the hell was he supposed to do here. Torino-sensei pulled at his cheeks, making a smile that resembled all might. Right. Reassuring someone is also a part of being a hero. Izuku gently rubbed the woman's back, saying things like, you're all right now, and other nice things. After a few minutes, she finally calmed down, stepping back with a slight blush of embarrassment. Sorry about that. It's fine, Izuku said with a reassuring smile as he and Torino-sensei tied the trio up. After what you've been through, it's only natural. It would have been a lot worse if it wasn't for you, the woman said with a bow. By the way, could you tell me your name? Izuku had been about to say his name, before remembering that he was technically on duty right now. The light hero, Beacon, Izuku said, maybe a bit proudly. I'm interning under All Might right now. Under All Might? The woman exclaimed, wait a minute. Aren't you the boy who won the sports festival? I remember your quirk now. Yeah, that was me. Izuku had to admit, he was a bit put off with how quickly she had switched gears. She's probably holding back her emotions right now, Gran Torino gruffly said after the police came to take her statement and arrest the 3 tied-up goons. I wouldn't be surprised if she breaks down the moment she reaches home. Izuku nodded. And I wouldn't be surprised if she comes to Might Tower within the next 3 days to see you. Izuku nodded, still lost in thought. Wait, what? Why would she come to see me? You saved her, Torino-sensei said like Izuku was an idiot. Not just that, you held her when she was at her worst. I wouldn't be surprised if she tried to ask you out, kid. Izuku's eyes widened, and he became a spluttering mess. Ask out? But we and I. No matter what, do not get too close to someone you've saved, his teacher said firmly. To them, you'll have become something like a god. After all, you swooped in on probably the worst day of their life to save them. Honestly, I'd say the same about fans, but most of them are really not that bad. Izuku nodded again. The world is really messed up, huh? Torino-sensei nodded gravely. That's why we do what we do. Stopping these things, like what you did today, help make it a little less terrible every day. Izuku nodded, pondering his mentor's words. I think I need to look into some psychology books. Next time I need to comfort someone probably won't be like this. There's a book Toshinori got halfway through before he left for America. I don't remember the name, but there should be a copy at the library in Might Tower. There's a library there? Any facility you can imagine is probably in that tower, kid.